statement, Eileen?
Township of Howell Zoning Board of Adjustment, Monday, January 27th, 2025. I hereby declare this meeting of the Howell Township Zoning Board to be open. Adequate notice having been given pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act in the following manner. First, on January 2nd, 2025, a copy of said notice was emailed to the Asbury Park Press and the Star Ledger. Second, on January 2nd, 2025, a copy of said notice was hand-delivered to the clerk of the Township of Howell. Third, on January 2nd, 2025, said notice was posted in the office of the Zoning Board and on the Bulletin Board in the Howell Township Municipal Building, 4567 Route 9, Howell Township, New Jersey. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code and for your safety, please be advised that this facility is designed with 2 emergency exits at the front and rear of the meeting room. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcasts on Howell Township TV 77. Thank you.
Thanks, Eileen. Could we all rise in for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Eileen, can we have a roll call?
Mr. Barillo.
Here.
Mr. Cantor.
Here.
Mr. Hughes.
Here.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Here.
Mr. Roscoe.
Here.
Mr. Ryan.
Literally.
Present.
Ms. Scottson.
Here.
Mr. Kabarakis.
Here.
And Chairman Mertens.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Here she is, so we can... Do we have any approvals to approve tonight? Minutes?
No minutes to
Okay.
approve tonight.
Okay.
I have one thing for correspondence.
Okay, let's do that, and then we'll get the...
Okay.
Everybody.
Case number BA 1926A, Oakland Road, LLC, will be carried to February 10th, 2025, with no further notice, and it has an expiration date of March 1st, 2025.
Okay. Anybody here for case BA 19-26A, Oakland Road, LLC? That will be carried to the next meeting, February 10th, with no further notice, and we're good with expirations and everything.
Correct.
Okay, good. Okay, Andy, could we swear in the professionals?
You swear the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Please state your names for the record.
Charles Cunliffe.
Jennifer Beam, Sherry Spiro.
Your professionals are sworn.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Okay, we'll have the resolutions right now. First, zoning board attorney, resolution appointing Andrew Bayer, Esquire of Husmanstein for 2025. Eligible voters, Barillo, Cantor, Hughes, O'Donnell, Orozco, Ryan, Scottson, Kaparowski, and Chairman Mertens. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Second by Anne Marie. Roll call.
Mr. Barillo.
Yes.
Mr. Cantor.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe.
Yes.
Mr. Ryan.
Yes.
Ms. Scottson.
Yes.
Mr. Kabarakis.
Yes.
And Chairman Mertens.
Yes.
Resolution approved.
Okay, next resolution, zoning board engineer, resolution appointing Charles Cunliffe, P.E. of TMN Associates for 2025. Eligible voters, Barillo, Cantor, Hughes, O'Donnell, Orozco, Ryan, Scottson, Kapuskas, and Chairman Mertens. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve. Second that motion.
Mr.
Roll-
Barillo.
Yes.
Mr. Cantor.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe.
Yes.
Mr. Ryan.
Yes.
Ms. Scottson.
Yes.
Mr. Kabarakis.
Yes.
And Chairman Mertens.
Yes.
Resolution approved.
Okay, we'll try the zoning board planner. Resolution appointing Jennifer Beam, PP ALCP of Leanne S. Avakian Incorporated for 2025. Eligible voters: Barillo, Cantor, Hughes, O'Donnell, Orozco, Ryan, Scottson,
Paparakis.
Paparoskas, and Mertens. Do I have a motion? We're getting there.
Motion to approve.
Roll call?
Mr. Barillo?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Scottson?
Yes.
Mr. Kavarakis?
Yes.
Chairman Mertens?
Yes.
Resolution approved.
Okay, one more to do.
Thank you.
Okay, licensed tree expert, resolution appointing Sherry Spiro, LTE of CME Associates for 2025. Eligible voters: Barillo, Cantor, Hughes, O'Donnell, Orozco, Ryan, Scottson, Kavaraskis, and Mertens.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Barillo?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Scottson?
Yes.
Mr. Kavarakis?
Yes.
Chairman Mertens?
Yes.
Resolution approved.
Okay, great. Okay, applications before the board tonight. This first case is number BA 21-28, Freehold Welding, and it will be for an extension of time. Description: applicant is seeking a one-year extension of time for previous approved certificate of non-conformity memorized on September 11th, 2023. The applicant was granted a certificate of non-conformity confirming that an existing residential use, an existing commercial welding business, multiple principal uses and structures. It is a pre-existing nonconformity if the property, along with a use variance approval for expansion of the welding business and the new vehicle detailing uses, along with the variance and waivers. Expiration January 31st, 2025.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Salvatore Alfieri on behalf of the applicant. The approval was granted in September of 2023. The resolution said that it had to be perfected within 1 year, so it would have been September of 2024. After the approval was granted, I know my client and the professionals met with Shari on site to deal with a potential landscaping issue on the side of the property between the subject property and adjacent property. We worked on some of the documentation, but my client has not been able to perfect the approval. We have two open items we need to deal with. One is, I believe, we need to get Charlie a resolution compliance plan. And the second thing is we've prepared, and we're going to be sending to the board professionals shortly, a declaration of covenants and restrictions. There were a couple of conditions within the approval that had to be memorialized and recorded in the county clerk's office. That documentation has been finished. We're waiting for my client to give us the final okay, and then I'm going to send it to your board professionals, at which point we will have met all the conditions. I don't think we're going to need till September of this year, but we're asking for a 1-year extension just in case, because things sometimes take longer than expected.
Okay. Jennifer?
No issue.
Okay. Board members? Okay, do we have a motion for an extension of time?
I'll make a motion for an extension of time.
Second by Jose. Roll call?
Mr. Barillo?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Scottson?
Yes.
Mr. Kavarakis?
Yes.
And Chairman Mertens?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Sal. So I guess we'll see you soon.
Yeah, I'm not going to get up.
Okay, next case. Case number BA 23-16, the Center for Education, New Jersey. Conditional use variance, bulk variance, and PF major site plan. Application of the Center for Education, New Jersey as applicant and owner seeking conditional use variance, bulk variance, and preliminary and final major site plan approval for the operation of a school on a farm property to teach pre-vocational skills to students with disabilities. The application proposes to convert the existing 2.5-story dwelling to a school use with 2 classrooms, a living room, bathroom, laundry room, and kitchen on the first floor, and 3 offices, a kitchen, bathroom, and storage room on the second floor. The application proposes other site improvements on Block 42, Lot 43, 729 Lakewood Farmingdale Road, with the expiration of January 31st, 2025.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, Salvatore Alfieri, Cleary, Giacobbe, Alfieri, and Jacobs on behalf of the applicant. As the board chairman indicated in the summary, this application requires both conditional use variance relief and D1 variance relief because we're proposing multiple uses on one lot. The property currently has a single-family house up front and a horse barn in the back, and then some part structures in between. The applicant's proposing to convert the home up front into the special needs housing, school, and office space, and use the horse farm in conjunction with the special needs education. There's minimal site improvements proposed because pretty much the site doesn't require much in terms of site work. We've received, and I just want to clarify, we have T&M's report January 24th. Jen, yours July 15th, is that your rate? Shari, yours September 23rd? Okay, good. And then we have several other departmental reports that we are prepared to address as part of our presentation. We have 3 witnesses to present. We have Walter Hopkin, our engineer. We have a representative from the school, and then our planner is Christine Cafone, and our first witness is going to be Walter Hopkin.
Okay, Sal, do you want to get everybody sworn in, and then we'll go from there?
Right, and you're going to affirm one.
Yeah.
They're going to affirm you, so they'll testify.
Do you affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name for the record, starting with Mr. Hopkins.
Walter Hopkin?
Christine Cafone?
Okay, can you just spell your name?
Say with letters?
Yeah.
Shira, S-H-I-R-A. Lieberman, L-I-E-B-E-R-M-A-N.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The witnesses.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thayer.
Okay, Mr. Hopkin, can you put your qualifications on the record?
Sure. I have a Bachelor of Science from Drexel University. I'm a licensed engineer in the states of New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Maryland. I'm a certified municipal engineer in New Jersey. I have had the privilege of testifying and being accepted in front of this board as well as your planning board and surrounding communities.
Okay, we accept your qualifications.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you,
Okay,
Mr.
Sal.
Chair. And Mr. Hopkins, is there a specific exhibit you're going to request that we put on the screen as part of your initial testimony?
Probably A18, which is a color rendered version of the site.
All right, so while that's coming up, can you, well, we should wait so you can orient the board on where the property is located.
There we go.
Thank you. So, Mr. Hopkins, referring to A18, would you orient the board as to where this property is located and what the surrounding uses are?
Sure. It's a 25.95 acre site on Lakewood Farmingdale Road, just catty corner offset from Victory Road, which you can see as you're looking at the rendering to the west or to the left is the intersection with Victory Road. It's known as 729 Lakewood Farmingdale Road, Block 42, Lot 43, and it is located in your ARE 6 zone. The surrounding uses, which you can see on this rendering as well, to the north is a single-family, a large parcel with potentially some farming. It looks like it may have been subdivided because I do see additional lots that have been carved off of that. To the south is wooded. That's a township-owned property, the majority of that. Up against the road, there is a single-family home there as well, and there's a lot that's owned by the Manasquan River Regional Sewage Authority. To the east, across the road, off of Victory Road, is an auto body shop. to the west. And to the east are single-family homes. It's difficult to see in this, but they front on Easy Street in that location as well. What exists, as Mr. Alfieri indicated, is there's a previously residential home in the front that's being converted. There are 2 other storage buildings throughout the site, which are located and oriented towards the front of the site. There's a smaller barn also in that area. And then, as you can see, there's a large, we'll call it a barn, but it's really an indoor riding arena in the rear of the site. What's proposed, really no additions to the building whatsoever. We're proposing 1 handicap ADA accessible space and ramp to service the building in the front. There's also 10 parking spaces to the, looking at it to the right or to the east of the small barn in the front. And then there are 13 parking spaces that we're really just delineating adjacent to the large riding arena in the back. If you're counting, that's a total of 24 parking spaces, including the ADA accessible. We believe at 24 we're exempt from the EV parking requirements of the state, so we're not proposing any at this time. There's a refuse area that's proposed adjacent to the barn, between the barn and the 10 proposed parking spaces. That would be.
Could you point that out?
Yes, sir. What's the best way for me to do this?
Do you have a? Yeah.
Okay.
Which one on that screen is the best?
Yes.
So the refuse, very difficult in the rendering, but the refuse area is in this area.
And Walter, is that enclosed, and if so, with what kind of material?
Masonry enclosure, intended to comply with your ordinance. Can I hang on to this? Sure.
Don't leave it.
I have my own, but it's not this fancy.
And Walter, before you get into more detail, is there any disturbance proposed to any of the area that's cleared presently? So there's no tree removal or anything proposed, is that correct?
No tree removal, but there is an area, the parking spaces by the refuse area, that will be new gravel. The amount of gravel we're considering as impervious, it's approximately 5,057 square feet, which is, does not qualify it as a major development, and therefore it's not required to be a...
Excuse me, is that bluestone?
I don't know that we specified the
Okay,
type of stone.
but it will be, okay.
But it would be something that's suitable for
Okay.
driving on. We're, just to be conservative, we're considering it impervious, but it still falls below any threshold for stormwater management. The client recently added a few things that we went out at the end of last year to as-built. Lighting was one of those. They added some building-mounted lights that we were able to get the specifications on and added to our to a lighting plan. These weren't designed; they were kind of put on, and we as-built them afterwards. So the heights of those comply with your ordinance, but the intensity is a little intense in some areas. So we could work with Mr. Cunliffe's office to modify that if required.
Before we move on from that, Walt, so my office performed a site visit within the last week, and several of the lights on the buildings don't match the detail that's shown on the plan. You show in a wall pack with a cutoff that's downward facing. On the large barn in the rear, you've got like 2 or 3 Cobra-style heads that are almost pointing out at like 90 degrees, and then several of the wall packs don't have the cutoff shield. So is it the representation from the applicant is if what's out there doesn't match your plan, they're going to change it to match your plan?
Well, we'll update it. I think what happened there, quite honestly, is we as-built-ed the recently installed lighting and didn't as-built the previously installed lighting. So there's a mixture of both of those.
When did this change happen from what you showed on your plan versus what's physically out there? Because within 5 days ago, what's on your plan doesn't match what's shown on, what's physically out there.
Right, so at the end of last year, they added some lighting. We picked up the lighting that they added but we didn't as-built what was already there maybe a year or so ago.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
So
So,
we'll update our plan, make sure it makes sense.
so, you know, and I'll let John jump in later, but I do believe there's been some inquiries from adjacent residential properties in regards to light and intensity and spillover and things like that. So if the representation is everything's going to be downward facing with cutoff shields, so it's downward facing, you know,
Yeah, and we would certainly stipulate, and we understand that that's required. And we'll work with the board professionals to make sure that there's no spillage off-site and it meets the ordinance standards with the necessary screening of the.
So, Sal, respectively, there's been complaints about the lighting. And here we are, all these months later, with no revisions to the plans. So, I'm not opposed to moving forward, but the fact that this has been an issue that you've obviously been aware of and have done nothing to update your plans to address it is concerning to me a little bit.
So my office and I personally can take responsibility for that because we did attempt to address it. We were aware of that. And I guess the mistake that we made was we as-built did the recently installed lights, probably the ones that are showing up on the board here, and didn't include the lights that were previously on the.
So I also I think you need to spend a little bit more time testifying about the lighting and about how it doesn't need to be completely invisible. It's the lights, like, explain how exactly the requirements are written and what you're required to comply with, because I think that there's a disconnection that, like, lighting is supposed to be invisible from the surrounding areas as opposed to spillage. What's the difference? And explain what the requirement is and how you meet it.
Right, so if I,
You have to stop. I understand you're upset. Respectfully, we're creating a record here, and you're not helping yourself. So there will be a time for you to get up and speak, but the commentary from the peanut gallery needs to stop, because it gets picked up on the tape, and it's not helping you.
It's frustrating, I'm sorry.
I understand,
It's hard to
but
sit
you
here
need
and
to
listen to lies.
you need to,
Yeah, we're trying to resolve this and put everything on record, so, okay. Okay, good. You can proceed.
thank you. So the lighting, what the ordinance requires is that the lighting levels be reduced at the property line. In this case, it's 0-foot candles, which is the light level that you would encounter if you were standing at the property line and you had something out to look at it. We meet that. We definitely meet that. We're well within the standards. We will update it to ensure that the existing lights don't affect that, but it's my opinion that those wouldn't. We are, in fact, at 0-foot candle. The closest that we come would be in the area of the riding arena, because there are building-mounted lights there. And we get to 0-foot candles within 30 feet of the property line. So we're well within your ordinance.
you're not within our ordinance.
Yeah, you've got pole-mounted lights that are shown at 30-foot high when
So-
the maximum we permit is 24 feet. So
Right,
that's
and-
not
and-
compliant with the
and
ordinance.
If I'm permitted to continue my testimony, you've asked me to address light spillage. And when I get to that point, I can now, that your ordinance requires a certain mounting height. Those lights were proposed, and they were proposed at an inappropriate height, so we will reduce those heights to comply with your ordinance.
Yeah, so I would just submit to the board, if you're going to act favorably on the application, we need to see a revised lighting plan as part of the resolution compliance submission to the satisfaction of all the board's professionals, you know, no light spillage, downward facing. Are you going to talk about, I guess the applicant's going to talk about hours of operation, because
Yes.
the lighting schedule indicates the lights will be on from dusk till dawn, and I'm just curious on why lights need to be on in the middle of the night for a school use. So we'll want to hear about that.
I concur.
We don't, yeah, that's again, I'll take responsibility for that. It's a general note that we had for a commercial site with this, which this clearly isn't, so that's not what would be intended. We would update that note and therefore what is occurring at the site.
Okay.
We should see that.
No, we're gonna see it. Do you want us to at least get the testimony?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, no, but I'm definitely, I don't want to proceed until we have that. I concur.
You want to continue, Walter?
Sure. So unless there's additional questions from the board or the professionals about lighting, I'd like to move on to the other things that are on the site.
Go ahead.
Okay.
There were also some fire pits, raised gardens, and chicken coops that were recently added towards the end of last year in this area by the barn, and the applicant will discuss how that integrates with what their educational uses. There's circulation throughout the site. Yeah, I'm sorry. So circulation goes throughout the site. We did prepare a circulation plan that it comes a little close over here. So what we've shown is a K-turn. There's ample room to do a K-turn in this area. But there is circulation that's allowed throughout the site. We only anticipate a minivan, a box truck, or potentially a minibus. That's how the students are transported to the site. And we have shown circulation through the site that way. Mr. Cunliffe did identify that the two vehicles cannot pass each other at the entrance, and the intensity of this use really doesn't require that something like that would occur. And your fire official has also asked where there is a gate at the entrance, that a Knox box be included, and that would be something that we would add to our plans as well.
Yeah, so I'll just add to that, Mr. Chair, when we get to the operationals testimony, we'll kind of want to hear,
Yeah.
how many classes, how many buses, how frequently, how long they're here, and things like that, because, if it's a couple buses, or 2 buses a day, or 3 buses a day, and it's a couple K-turns, that's probably not an issue, but, if we're talking about buses coming in every 45 minutes, and then, passenger vehicles coming in and out at the same time, just from a emergencies perspective and safety perspective, obviously there's certainly more ideal if you can do a 360
Totally
degree.
agree with
So
you. So
let's hear the operational testimony before we put a pin in that.
The site is served by a septic system. We will work with the health department to see if the flows need to be upgraded and the septic system has to be increased in size. We put a note on the plan, and any condition of approval would be subject to the health department's approval of the septic design. There was some wetlands, I think, that one of the professionals saw, potential wetlands on the DEP website. We had one of our professionals from the office walk the site, and none of the proposed improvements are within any wetlands or buffers. We're proposing a small sign. That sign is shown on the plans. We actually took a picture of it. It exists. It's 12 square feet. Your ordinance only permits 4 because this is really a residential zone. If you look at the picture of the sign, it really isn't, or if you've been to the site, it's really not a large sign. It just identifies the site. It is too close to the road, so we'd be relocating it to a location that complies with your ordinance. The size does not, of course, comply with your ordinance and will require relief. There's also a fence along the front. As part of this, because this is a county road, we anticipate that the county is going to run a right-of-way dedication. So that's giving them a portion of the applicant's property. When we do that, the fence and the sign will be in the right-of-way. So we're going to relocate the sign as well as the fencing so that it's on the applicant's side of the right-of-way. That's really all that I have as far as site improvements. There's relief that's required, and I don't know if you want to go over that at this time.
Yeah, one other follow-up question, or 2 follow-up questions. One is in terms of stormwater management. You did indicate that we're not disturbing enough land to require stormwater management features, but how does the property currently drain?
So the site, I mean, it's relatively flat, but it does drain in several different directions, off to, actually to the north, and then to the rear of the property.
And your testimony is that the increase in impervious for that parking area will not impact in any way negatively any drainage features?
That's correct.
There's also the professional reports, which contain various technical comments that we don't need to get into unless there's something that you think we can't address as a condition of approval. Or in the alternative, can you stipulate that we can address all the technical comments as a condition of approval?
We can address them unless there's something specific that the professionals would like me to
All right, and then
concentrate on.
finally, there are waivers and variances, and we do have a planner who will ultimately testify whether it's tonight or a subsequent meeting, Mr. Chair, but can you at least run through from the engineering point of view the relief that we need?
Sure.
You could ignore the D variance relief, because that will be pure planning, but the rest, can you identify them?
Yeah, in no particular order, the lighting. So the light intensity, what we didn't go over is there are certain parts of the site that are not lit enough, actually, right, to comply with your ordinance. So the intent was only to light the buildings and the parking areas. So we technically need relief from that. We would withdraw, and I would testify that we won't require relief from the height, because we'll reduce the height of the lighting as required. And I can also testify that we will comply with your requirement of 0-foot candles at the property lines. Your ordinance also requires a 30-foot circulation aisle. We're really trying to just reduce the impervious and the amount of improvements, so we just simply request that what exists there be permitted, and what exists there is roughly 10 to 12 feet wide. Your ordinance requires a certain pavement section for parking areas, again, to reduce the impervious and the cost. We're just proposing gravel for the new parking area. The parking area by the barn exists, and there's already gravel there.
So before we go beyond that, so, yeah, it's gravel, is it contained with anything, like curbing, any kind of, like, utility pole, like something on the ground to keep the gravel where you're saying it's going to stay?
We don't have that. We could add it. We have bumper blocks to delineate them, but if we wanted to add like a railroad tie to
Or
hold.
something, I think it's important, because if you don't have something solid over time, especially in the winter months when you're trying to like plow out and whatever, the gravel goes all over the place. We need something that will make sure it's contained. I mean, they do need relief for that, because we typically require the parking areas to be solid surface, right, asphalt, paved. I don't take exception to the gravel, but I would like it contained in one way or another.
That's a great suggestion.
Yeah, because that's going to be a safety issue with the maintenance, having stones flying if they're using mowers and stuff, so I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
Also,
And Mr. Chair, I'll just add to that from a stormwater perspective. So I don't take issue with Mr. Hopkins' testimony regarding what's being added. It's under the threshold of what a major development is. Gravel is regulated motor vehicle surface, but it's 5,000 square feet. They're well under a quarter acre. I think to Jen's point, the concern is anytime we see uses with these general gravel parking areas, you know, if you look at historic aerials over time, those areas tend to expand, and what was originally contemplated or approved can change. So it just helps to delineate those areas. And to kind of go along with that sentiment, you know, I know Mr. Hopkins said there's 13 parking spaces that they're already there back by the rear barn, and they're just kind of delineating them. And then there's the 10 spaces up front next to the small masonry building, and then 188 parking space near the residence that's to be converted to office and classroom. I think we want to hear part of the use testimony, how many vehicles, how many people are coming in and out, to kind of, before we make a final declaration on whether the parking's sufficient, until we hear the use operation part of it. And before we put a pin in the lighting as well, so, you know, I'll defer to Sherry, but we had a comment in a letter about the color temperature of the lighting. You know, I don't think we have a hard and fast on the color temperature, but in residential areas, we kind of like to see at 3,000 Kelvin. That's a yellower, more subtle light. Once you get to 4,000, 5,000, their plan shows 4,000. Once you get to 5,000, you're talking about the harsh blue at like the car dealerships, you know, the headlights you can't see when you're driving behind you. that's something to consider. Maybe we want to cap that at 3,000 Kelvin. And then with the use testimony, we need to hear something more definitive on the operation for the lighting, whether it's shutting off at a certain time or whether it's dimming at a certain time. We need to have something we can actually put in a resolution.
Yes, absolutely.
Also, Mr. Chair, real quick, just to confirm, are these parking spaces with the gravel for cars, or is there farm equipment also planned in that
I'm sorry, cars or?
Farm equipment.
area? Yeah, and the parking spaces with gravel, is that just for vehicles, or is it also farm equipment and other things?
Just passenger vehicles.
Okay, thank you.
All right, you're continuing with the variance relief, please.
Loading space, your ordinance requires a loading space for this use just because of the nature of it. The only deliveries we would expect would be a box truck or a minivan, and they could use the parking spaces that are proposed. Your ordinance requires sidewalks, which I'm sure you're well aware. You can see from the aerial that no sidewalks exist, either along the property frontage, on the other side, or on either side of the property, so we would ask that relief be provided for that. Ms. Spiro's letter details the many, as well as Ms. Beam's letter, the many sections of your ordinance which requires buffering for the site. Again, it's an existing site with virtually no site improvements, which actually is naturally buffered currently, so we would ask for relief from those various buffer and landscaping requirements. Your ordinance also requires that a driveway not open into a public street within 150 feet of an intersection. You can see Victory Road is kind of offset, but this is an existing condition. And your conditional use requires a connection to a public sewer, and it's just simply not available to this site, so we would just ask that we be allowed to continue on a septic system and upgrade it to the health department standards. There are other bulk variances that the planner will get into them, but just so I can orient the board to them. Your ordinance requires 31 acres for conditional use. We're at 25.95. Front yard setback is actually 150 feet. That's required for this conditional use. We're just over almost 6 feet, and that's a function of A, it's existing, and B, the right-of-way that we're dedicating to the county. Lot coverage, your ordinance.
I have to just stop.
Yeah.
These are not bulk variances, Walter. These are conditions of a conditional use.
Okay.
If you don't meet them, they're D variances. So I don't want you to present this as if it's like, these are bulk variances, no big deal. These are conditions of a conditional variance, which has you here for a D variance.
Right.
So underplaying them is not advisable.
I would take exception to the characterization.
I mean, they're not bulk variances.
I would take exception to the characterization that I'm underplaying them.
Okay.
I simply indicated to the board that as the engineer, I'd like to orient them to them, and that the planner will testify to them.
And you also characterize them as bulk variances,
Okay.
which they're not. So
Okay.
I'm going to clarify for the record
Okay.
that they're D variances.
Okay. So lot coverage, your ordinance only permits 5%. 7.75 exists. We're tweaking it up a little bit because of the parking and the ADA parking space and the ramp to 8.1%. Building coverage, 3% is permitted, where 3.25 exists. And then there's also the sign area ordinance, because it's a residential zone, only permits 4 square feet. We're at 12. I think that's the relief,
And
summary of the relief
The
required.
one other final question is, there was a fire report that you referred to relating to the Knox box, but you would agree as a condition of approval that any other fire-related comments you would address?
Yes.
Okay. That's all the direct testimony we have, Mr. Chair, of the engineer.
Okay, Charlie, anything more you want to add? Questions?
So I'll let Jen chime in, because I think there's some more
Yeah.
relief needs to be testimony provided.
I mean, I understand you have a planner, but there's also the parking ratio for schools needs relief. The driveway needs relief, the illumination needs relief, the architectural needs relief, the connection to the sewer needs relief. We haven't heard our operational testimony regarding dormitory and faculty housing, as well as multiple principal uses, as well as multiple uses and structures. the lot coverage, the building coverage, the buffer, the lighting, the pavement section, the parking spaces, the loading space, and the sidewalk. So
He
I,
did present much.
some of them, yes, he did, but not all of them, so I just want to make sure.
And there's no dormitory or...
Well, that's part of the conditional use, that you need to provide testimony to, in our letter, it's very clear, testimony should be provided as to compliance. So those are things
So-
that we don't know yet.
I would say, when we get to the use
Yes.
about the existing dwelling, we had a bunch of questions in our letter, we'll reserve it for the
Yes.
applicant.
Understood.
And if I could, to clarify the parking, so it's our position that we do comply. I think since the letter that your office issued, and now we did delineate the additional parking spaces in the rear, our calculations indicate 24 are required and 24 are provided. I know that the,
Do you have bus parking?
I know, no, we don't. I know the board is going to want to hear additional testimony, but I just wanted to clarify that we did add additional, or we.
Right, so
delineated
I would
additional.
suggest we maybe go through this a little bit more, because the condition is, off-street parking shall be provided in the following ratio. Elementary and intermediate schools shall provide 1 parking space for each staff member or employee, plus 2 parking spaces per classroom, plus adequate spaces for buses and delivery vehicles. So, I'm not saying you don't comply, but I'm saying that you haven't provided the testimony to justify it.
Understood.
I'm also concerned about the relief on the 30-foot circulation aisle. That's not a big deal. Because it sounds to me like 12 feet's not going to be enough space for everybody to get in and out.
So generally, that's reserved for commercial site plans. This is a little bit different. The Fire Bureau will also review to opine on whether they're concerned from a circulation perspective. 12 feet, I think the areas where it's the narrowest is, if you look at the aerial that's being shown right now, there's the dirt or stone path that goes around the barn, the rear and the side of the barn. That might be where it's the 12-foot the narrowest. There are some spots of the main driveway where it's maybe 16, 17 feet wide. Perhaps could that be widened to 20 feet wide so that 2 vehicles can safely pass each other? That's usually what's required per the UCC. And for fire code, well, is that something that the applicant could kind of work with or delineate something, even if it's, paver grass or something like that, so we get in 20-foot wide for vehicles to pass?
We want to make sure it's safe, so if it's something that we can work with Mr. Cunliffe's office and/or the Fire Bureau, we can certainly comply with.
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea, because I do agree with Scottson, it is a safety issue when you have,
No,
I appreciate that.
and I want to be clear, I'm not suggesting that it needs to be 30-foot wide. I think, typically the Fire Bureau will issue memos that say 20-foot wide, need to have 14.5-foot clearance. So 20-foot wide, as long as it's stabilized or has some kind of paver grass block or something like that, so 2 vehicles can get in either direction, I think would probably be sufficient. So.
That's fine.
okay. Members, Glenn, you want questions?
Yeah, you mentioned that it's naturally buffered. Are the natural buffers compliant with our buffering requirements naturally?
No.
How uncompliant are they?
Well, nothing's proposed, so I guess maybe I didn't characterize it right, but I think if you look at the site, you
There's
see that.
nothing on the top. Looks like there's nothing on the north.
Well, there's a tree, there's trees.
That's not on your
There's no-
Understood.
There's no landscape buffering proposed on our property at all. We're not proposing anything. We're taking advantage of the fact that it's just a pocket of property that's surrounded by trees.
Right,
But we're not proposing any.
but you said naturally buffered, and that's what I was curious.
Okay,
There's,
so-
there's,
I apologize, I
nothing
didn't
there.
mean to mischaracterize.
naturally is
it.
nothing, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Mike, Nick? Yeah,
Can I just
yeah,
opine
sure.
a little bit on the buffer? I just
Sure.
want to, listen, I know, and you know that I'm crazy about enforcing our buffers here, but I do think it's important to note that the 50-foot buffer, especially the farmland buffer, is in our ordinance to protect the farm. It's not to protect the surrounding uses, it's to protect the farm. This is an existing farm that's adding, and I think that we're kind of getting into the weeds without knowing the operations, which I think is becoming more and more glaring, that we need to get the operational testimony on the record. But it's important to note, and you know me, I'm never one to advocate relief for this, but The intent of the farmland buffer is to protect the farm,
Yes.
not the surrounding area. So that's important to note as we move forward. But I do think it's important to understand the operations of the site. Is it still going to be, utilized as a farm, with the school kind of as a second principal use, but not taking over the farm use? Like, we need to understand how that's going to be used to understand whether or not, we have issues with these other variance questions with, like, for example, the width of the road and all those other things that we typically discuss. So I do think it probably would be good to get the operational testimony on the record, so we understand that, my understanding, and Sal, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the information that we were given is it's like 24 students.
Yeah, that's all that it's.
Right, so we're not talking like a high school here with hundreds of students and staff and et cetera. So I do think the operational testimony is going to go a long way to addressing some of these other engineering-related issues that normally we would have an issue with, but we may or may not, given the nature of the operation.
And in our prep meeting with our professionals and our client, we were debating operations first or engineering first. And we decided engineering only because we wanted you to see the site and understand it before you heard how it's going to operate. So that's why we chose that order, and that'll be our next witness when you're ready.
Okay. So anybody else from the board before we move on? Okay, the one thing is we are going to do the public comments after everybody's testified, because what I think we need to do is make sure the public gives their input, so when you come back next time, you can address their concerns, so.
That's fine. And-
Okay.
And judging from the comments specifically about the lighting, the board's not going to act tonight because you want to see that plan, which means
Yeah.
we probably will not present our planning testimony until we address all the technical issues and then put the planning on the record. But I'll defer to Jennifer how she wants to handle it.
I mean, it's totally up to you whether you want to act on the application or not. I think that if you're comfortable after the operations, you only have operations, right, Sal, and that's it?
And then planning.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. I mean, I'm comfortable moving forward with the totality of it. If you trust Charlie and I to deal with the lighting as a condition, I feel like we're here, they're all here, let's just get it going.
Yeah, I agree.
so
We
I
might get
mean,
the testimony in, but let's see how we are after operations.
Agreed.
And then we'll go from there.
That's fine. Ready?
Yeah, let's
Shira?
do that.
Yeah,
So, Ms. Lieberman, can you advise the board what your position is with the school and the property?
So I'm the director of the Center for Education, which is an approved private school for the disabled.
And when you say approved by whom?
It's approved by the New Jersey Department of Education. It's actually a rigorous, it took us most probably over a year to receive the license from the state. They go through about 6 different parts.
Excuse me, can everybody hear her?
I'm sorry.
Do you want to?
Move that little prism closer to
All right, so you were talking about the licensing. Why don't you start with that again?
So is that good?
That's better.
Sorry about that. So we're an approved private school for the disabled, which is a New Jersey Department of Education delineation for a special needs school. We service, is it possible to get my slideshow up? Makes me less nervous to have a visual.
That's A17, right, John?
Thank you. So we're New Jersey Department of Ed, thank you. So we received our approval in May of 2015. We started off with 3 special needs students. Presently, we are servicing children from preschool until 8th grade. All children are placed by the district, and they're all with a self-contained designation. The reason why a child will come to the Center for Education as opposed to staying in their district is because their level of disability is too great for the district to be able to service them. So the district makes a decision, which is made by the child study team, if they should place a child by us. Next slide, please.
Well, just before
Oh,
you
sorry.
do that,
Question?
go to
Of
the
course.
When you say they, are you talking Howell Board of Ed, or Freehold Regional Board of Ed, or the New Jersey Board of Ed? Like, who are you talking about?
Thank you. Yes, thank you. It's up to the individual school district. Presently, we have children who are from Lakewood, Tinton Falls, and Jackson. We're in the process of a child being placed from Toms River. As of yet, we don't have anyone from Howell. We hope that changes.
But in that last bullet, you talked about special needs, but you give some examples of the type of special needs. Just run through that, please.
So I guess the reason why I put those specific disabilities in, even though we have so many disabilities, is because I'm specifically seeing that the first three of those disabilities, autism, Down syndrome, and cerebral palsy, are the students who I feel will benefit most from a farm-like program. The reason why I put in hearing impairments is because we are one of the rare exceptions in the state of having a very large concentration. We presently have 12 students that are hearing impaired with cochlear implants, and that is an area of specialization for us in the state. So I just put that in because it's actually somewhat unusual.
All right, next slide, please.
That's a picture of the house that we are looking to convert. The idea and our plan for the farm, should you accept it and allow us to do it, is to create a pre-vocational program to teach students farm skills and allow them to sample different jobs. From my experience, and this is just my own anecdotal experience, I will often have people calling me up with adults, 22, 23, and they'll say, we'd like a job at the center. And I say, what can they do? And I am horrified how they've gone through our school system and yet they don't have job skills. So the idea is to look at our students. I always tell my teachers, we're looking at our students at 3, we're looking at them at 5, we're looking at them at 12, and saying, how do we get them to be 21 years old and able to have really meaningful lives with skills? This idea is in order to do that. This idea is in order to make a difference in special needs children's lives at the age of 10 and 12. Looking at them and saying, look at these boys and girls now. What can we do to make their lives richer? Where do we see the gap?
And before you move on to the slide, can we discuss the building?
Yes,
So.
it's on my next slide.
And Sal, before you move on, if I could just add a point of clarity. So the Center for Education, it's an existing school? Is it, obviously you're operating from the farm now, and that's why you're here before the board, but is there, is this a satellite to a hub that's somewhere else?
No, so I apologize. The Center for Education is located at 1400 Prospect Street. That is our only location. What we are asking, the New Jersey Department of Education, I thought actually that was going to be the more complicated part. They came down to the farm to look at the site and to say, we showed them the curriculum that we wanted to use. We went over what we wanted to do. We showed them the space. And the New Jersey Department of Education is comfortable with us going ahead with this program. So we have the approval of the New Jersey Department of Education. We do not presently have any students that are being educated on this site as of present.
So
we're asking for that educational use
Gotcha.
variance.
So the main school is in Lakewood, and then
That is correct.
they come to this site, and, I'm calling it a satellite. It's not.
They don't presently. That's what we'd like to do.
Yeah, no, I get it, but what I'm saying is, if this is approved, their main schooling occurs in Lakewood, and then they come here for vocational train?
So we would like to, again, with the board's permission, we'd like to actually have 10 students in this bottom floor where they have 2 classrooms. That's what we'd like to do, in a small therapy room. We'd like to be able to educate them on this site. There's something just beautiful and magical, and truthfully, I mean, anyone who knows the traffic in this town, taking them back and forth would be a waste of educational time. So I really would like them to be able to, be there from the start of the day till the end of the day, just not to waste the travel time that's required.
So if you feel like the student would benefit most from this environment versus the environment in Lakewood, this would be their primary schooling location.
That is correct.
You wouldn't have duplicative services between the two.
That's
But
correct.
you would have potentially students that only go to the Prospect Street location and would not benefit from this.
Yes, ma'am.
Understand?
And is the approval from the Department of Education in writing? Do you have like a letter?
I have an email from them.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. The approval is contingent on us getting an e-use from Howell. we have permission to actually run an educational program as I'm describing. That
Assuming
is
you get
agreed.
approval from us tonight
Correct,
or
correct.
at some future meeting.
Exactly right. That's exactly right.
Understand.
So, and then just one follow-up question, apologize. So, so it's not like, you know, we have 10 students coming from Lakewood for 2 hours, and then they go back to Lakewood, and then there's the next 10 students coming for the next 2 hours. We're saying they're there full-time, and it could be up to 24 students at some point in time.
That is correct.
Okay.
And how would they get there?
They would come on a minibus. The district would
minibus.
provide, that's the way our students get to school, is they would go on a minibus.
And the minibus would drop the kids off and leave, or do they
Yes,
sit?
the minibus is a district, would be a district minibus.
So it'd be like they drop off at any school and then they would leave?
That is correct. They would not be staying there.
But no large buses, at least that's at your proposal now.
Right now, we have 92 students, they're all dropped off on minibuses.
So let me ask you this, and the reason I'm asking this is because you're here now, and I would hate for you to have to, like, assuming if the board were to act in the affirmative and everything goes great, do you envision potentially a full-size bus or never?
Right now, I've been the director since 2015, they've only given us minibuses.
The only reason I'm asking is that maybe you want to ask for that, Sal, in the event, just, the only reason I'm asking you, if it never happens, it never happens, but I would hate for you to leave here and it be conditioned only on minibuses, and then you get to a point where a larger scale bus would be more appropriate, and I would hate for you to have to come back. That's the only reason why I would bring that up.
Yeah,
That sounds very smart.
or if you have any kind of event that happens maybe once a semester or something like that, where a larger bus brings a large amount of students just for that given day, you know, present it
that's
to the
very
board and
smart.
let them hear that.
I think that's very smart.
So Sal, I would just request that if that were to be the case, which I would recommend, that it would be conditioned that the bus not stay on site. Like, once it drops off the students, or for whatever reason, that it leave the site. Because it doesn't seem like you have any place identified for it to park.
That's fine, and that was our intent all along.
Okay.
That's fine, thank you. John, go to the next slide. I'm not sure the next slide.
Yep, that's the slide.
What about the classrooms? I want to talk about.
It's right there.
this.
The school will only use the first floor of the farmhouse for its students. That is actually a real picture of this baby lamb that was just born on the farm. The second floor would not be used by students. It would only be used as office and storage. The rest of the property would be managed by the owner. The max that we are allowed by the NJDOE is 24 students. We generally do a 1-to-2 ratio unless the IEP mandates a one-on-one. The school day is from 8:45 until 2:30.
And then, let's focus on the first floor first.
8:45 to 2:30.
And, so while we're talking about the hours, there's also some after-school activity as well, right?
Correct.
When is that, and what is that after-school activity?
So the Special Children's Center runs 2:30 for a special needs child. Actually, 2:30 for any child is just too early for them to come home. So the Special Children's Center runs a program from 2:30 until 5:30, and I believe once a week from 2:30 until 6:30, as well as Sunday for 3 hours, for just respite. It's really just a respite program. The kids groom the horses, play with the animals, do some sports. There's some bikes there. It's really just a respite program to give them meaningful activities to do with their time.
And those kids are the same, you're not bringing additional students in, it would be the
No.
students that are there all day?
No, that's not correct.
What's not correct?
No. It's the students that are there, those 10 students that we're talking about, and then at 2:30, there is an additional group that's
So
bused
how
in.
many students would be there after?
I would say there's going to be 25. Well, my vision is that we would start out with the 10 students that we have now, and then add another 15 that would come from a different school to a sum total of 25.
And they would arrive by the same?
These
type-
minibuses.
Minibuses, okay.
The slide says 24, just so you know.
Yes, the Center for Education, which is asking for the e-use for that small building, we can only go, according to the NJDOE, to the max of 24 students. The after-school program does have other students coming. So for next year, what I would say would likely happen would be that our 10 students, which is what we're planning on doing next year, the 10 students would stay, and then 15 other students would come for a total, I would guess that there'd be about 25, 30 students for the after-school program.
24 students, potentially, it could be 30, 35 students
It could.
in the afternoon.
100%.
Leaving 5:30 most days,
Correct.
6:30 maybe.
That is correct. Could I add something here?
Sure.
Just to apologize, the Special Children's Center was not aware at all about the lighting and the frustration that it was causing our neighbors. The Special Children's Center really does want to be a good neighbor, and we will rectify that really immediately. I'm horrified on some level. I am, and I apologize for that. There's no reason why it needs to be on all night. I think.
So let's talk about that. What's a comfortable time frame for the lights to go on, other than an emergency lighting, and a comfortable time for them to go off each day?
So I do not run the farm. That would be something I would have to ask the farm, the farm staff why they're keeping it on so late. But I would say that there's no reason why it has to be on past 8. They could do the farm chores and take care of the animals without such large lights on, especially since it's causing so much distress to our neighbors.
So 8 PM, you would stipulate that the lights?
I don't control that.
Right.
I would ask that they close the lights by 8 o'clock.
Just understand.
The large lights.
Understand that if we get an approval tonight, whatever you say would be in a written resolution that you have to live with. So if you don't know the answer, we're gonna have to get it so the board understands what that time is.
Okay, so I'm happy to call the farm person and just make sure that what I'm saying is
Tonight.
tonight. I will walk out and get that answer.
Okay, we'll get back to that then. So,
Sal, sorry, before you move on, I just want to go back to the dwelling. So we said the first floor is going to be entirely classroom, and the second story is going to be office and storage. So I don't think we saw any plans for the basement. There are Bilko doors, at least shown on the site plan. Is there a basement to
The
this?
basement is locked. The basement, the NJDOE made us put a permanent lock in it.
Okay.
The door is
So if
locked.
it's used, it's for storage, there's no intent to make it habitable space?
Absolutely not.
Is there any attic space that could be converted to like additional space other than storage or anything like that?
It's not our intent.
Okay.
Yeah, Nick?
Yeah, you mentioned farm staff. They're going to be living on site then?
No one lives on site.
So the animal-
They come early in the morning. I think they come about 5 o'clock in the morning, and then they put the animals to bed. There is nobody who presently lives on site.
There's nobody with the animals overnight?
No.
Okay. The other question I had, you're envisioning 10 students at
Initially, up
initially,
until 24.
Up to 24, okay. So if we get to that point, we're at 24 students, and then you bring these additional students from 2:30 to 5:30, you say 15. So that's at 39? So
That
it's
is correct.
39 students.
That's correct.
I mean, are we past capacity of what they're supposed to have?
So, let me just address this. The 24 is for the educational purpose. The after-school is like, I hate to say this, but it's almost like a Y Kids or an aftercare program that is not regulated by the 24. The 24 is for the educational purpose. That's from like 8:30 to 2:30. That's the max that they can, correct? If I'm saying something wrong,
No,
tell me.
you're totally correct. It's
So
two
that's the 24 is the maximum amount of students that they can have there during the day for educational purposes. The aftercare program is a little bit different. They can have a few more students. And let me just clarify that a little bit. Are most of when you envision the additional students for aftercare, are these kids whose parents are at work and cannot pick them up until 5:30, 6 o'clock at night?
Yes.
And so they can't go home at 2:30 in the afternoon?
That is correct.
So you're not talking about a million cars in and out, dropping the kids
No-
off, they
no
come by
cars.
bus,
Yes,
right?
they're coming by bus from school, and they're being taken back by bus.
So it's similar, and I don't mean to diminish it, but I'm just trying to make it more generically understood. It's similar to if a child goes to a public elementary school and then are bused from that elementary school to the YMCA for Y Kids after school, and then are picked up by their parent at like 5:30, 6 o'clock.
That is absolutely correct.
That's what that's like.
Okay, but where are they getting picked up?
School, they're coming from school.
Yeah, but they're going back to the school where they,
No, and the parents come and pick them up at the farm, correct?
Okay.
No, they actually go with public transportation back to their houses.
Oh, they do, they don't, so nobody's coming to the farm to
Nobody
pick
comes
them
to the
up?
farm.
yeah, because I think that's a concern of mine.
There's
If
no
there's a lot of-
additional traffic associated with the after-school program?
Yeah, I don't think it'd be a good thing to have a lot of cars coming in and out, especially when it's dark.
We agree. And
Yeah.
the parking, just to clarify that, no parents are coming to the property, you've already confirmed that. The parking is really for your staff.
It's only for staff. If a parent would come, it would just be like a pickup, oh, the child has an appointment, okay, I have to just pick up Johnny early for a doctor's appointment.
Okay.
And what is the capacity, I guess my point was, what is the capacity of the school?
So it's a great question, and I realize I'm not totally being 100% clear. There's a lot of different things that.
Let me rephrase that. What is the capacity of the building?
24.
So
Okay.
let me,
That first farm building is a 24 capacity.
did I hear you say earlier that the teacher-student ratio is 1 to 2?
1 to 2
typically?
for the school, yes.
So if you have 24 students there, and you have, using that ratio, 12 teachers, now you're at 36 people in the building simultaneously, correct?
I mean, they're in the building the whole
Correct,
time.
24 students. 24 students. with
24
staff.
students plus 12 staff,
That's correct.
36 people in the building
That's
at one time.
correct. That's correct. Did I say 24 people?
No.
No, you didn't.
No, students.
Students.
What is the load capacity of people for the building? Is my question.
I don't know the answer.
Yeah, that's a construction code question, I don't know. We have to get, all we have is approval from the Department of Education for a maximum of 24 students.
Right, so we got
We would have
24
to
students, we have
call-
24 students, we have 15, maybe 20 students coming for after-school, and then we have 12 teachers, and my question is, like
So,
Bob was
Mr.
saying,
Grillo, the only thing I wanted to clarify is that there's numerous buildings on the property. So in the after-school program, the students aren't sitting in classroom settings. They're going out and they're in a pen and they're with the lambs. There's some students who are cleaning out the hayloft. There's some students who are feeding the horses. There's some students who are playing after-school sports. There's a lot of different there's some students who are doing art. There's some students who are actually horseback riding. So the after-school program is not a classroom-based type program the way the Center for Education is. The Center for Education is actual students sitting in classrooms, learning skills, going out and doing those skills. The after-school program is more, you actually said it great, Jennifer, it's more like a Y program, where there's different sort of clubs that the students can go to.
But there is the potential to have 50, 55
So,
children
just so
and teachers in
Just so
that.
you're aware, the building code, if you have movable tables and chairs, it's 15 square feet per person. So
But they're only using the first floor.
regardless, the staff probably is not going to just use the first floor, they're going to use both floors. I would venture to guess that unless it's like a torrential downpour, that these people are not going to be inside. That's the whole purpose of this initiative, is to be
Outside and-
interactive
yes.
with the agricultural use on the property. But even if you take the 24 students and the 12 teachers at 15 square feet, you're talking 540 square feet from a building code standpoint. There's more than enough room on the first floor for 540 square feet. So, not to mention the fact that that's kind of outside of our purview regardless. This is a construction code issue, has nothing to do with us. We can't regulate occupancy in a building. But at the end of the day, the site is, what did you say, almost 20 acres? And they have multiple buildings, and the purpose of this educational program is not have these particular children sit in a traditional classroom, because otherwise they wouldn't be here. The whole purpose is to interact and do basic life skills throughout the farm. Again, please correct me if I'm incorrect. So they're not all going to be in the building at the same time. It's no different than like a traditional elementary school. The kids aren't always in the classroom. They go to music, they go to gym, they go to art, they go to other things. So they're not all in the same place at the same time. My guess is, and I'm guessing, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is this is going to be skill-based versus age-based, right? So if somebody has a particular difficulty in certain things, they may be in one classroom where others are easier to understand how to work with the animals and deal with farm-type activities. So it's going to be broken up, not by age, not a traditional classroom setting. It's going to be organized by
Interest. By interest.
by interest. So I think,
There are a number of spaces in the barn.
how big is the house? Sal, do you know the square footage of the house?
We'll get it for you, I'm not positive. We'll have that for you in a second.
So, and I'll just add.
3,400
So I'll just add to it
Thank
too.
you.
So the Fire Bureau in their memo, they also indicated that if the board would act favorably, it would be subject to annual fire inspections. You know, they are gonna look to see whether the dwelling that's being converted, whether it has appropriate, you know, number of students for the building capacity as far as from fire code perspective. You know, if something comes up that's not in accordance with the testimony that's provided, you know, they share the same office as.
Okay, well, the bottom line is the compliance is going to be based on the approval of construction code and fire department.
Yes,
So
we
as
have-
long as you're, because Nick is right in one regard. I mean, this time of the year, you're not going to have the kids outside. So, I mean, it is a legit concern, but as long as you're complying with the code, that's perfectly fine.
We would, if this were approved, we still have to get building permits to convert whatever we're converting inside. We have to comply with fire, so that will all be done as part of that approval.
Okay.
And remember, though, that, again, even in the winter, when there's the after-school program, they're not in the school building, there's other buildings, there's the barns, et cetera, where the kids are, there's activities. It's not limited to the one building.
Matt?
You have the building?
Approximately 1,500 square feet is the footprint, so that would be the first floor.
Yeah,
Which is
sure.
all we're using for the school. It's the first, the classes, first floor.
And just perspective, that big barn in the back is like almost 30,000 square, it's humongous. It's really big.
Yeah. It looks,
If you haven't seen it, it's
Yeah.
ginormous.
We could bring her up.
Okay, Matt?
Yeah, I just had one quick question. When we're talking about like controlling the lights and all this stuff, which I know, you know, we're gonna deal with. I guess, are you a tenant there? Who owns it? 'Cause you're talking-
Special Children's Center owns it.
Okay, because I was gonna say, you had said that the farm staff comes in and you weren't privy, okay. All right, so they own it.
So we have a few other follow-up questions. It's currently a residential use. If the board were to grant this approval, one of the comments in the reports is you would agree to give up the residential use and make it the school use.
That is correct.
Secondly, Mr. Hopkins talked about the coops and the fire pits that were added. Can you describe how they're used in conjunction with the school and/or farm?
I think they're really used for farm use. The fire pits are used by the after-school program, not by the school program. The school program would very much like to teach the skills of gathering eggs, you know, being able to put them in, being able to care for the chickens. We would like to use them. Right now, they're being used as part of the after-school program.
And you heard comments about the narrowness of the drive aisles, and the concern was the traffic that's generated. So you've already testified that their parents aren't coming to
No.
the site regularly. So other than the employees, who comes to the site on a regular basis?
It just would be the students who are dropped off by buses and the staff.
How about deliveries? What types of deliveries occur?
So the delivery would be sort of like an Uber Eats type thing. We have a commercial kitchen at our 1400 Prospect Street location, which is food that is cooked by a adult day program of special needs individuals. They cook the food and they would deliver the food, drop it off, and then return back to the 1400 site.
So there's no food prep on
There's
site?
no food prep on
And
site.
there's a kitchen on the
We don't plan on using that.
so you're not going to use the kitchen for any prep? How about warming up food potentially?
I guess you could potentially use it to warm up food, but not to actually be cooking food.
Other than that food delivery, which would occur, what, once a day?
It would occur once a day.
Are there any other regular deliveries that might occur for your school use?
I assume they would be a certain amounts of just maintenance-type products. There's definitely hay that gets delivered. Again, that's, you know, animal feed gets delivered. I would assume some maintenance products would get delivered. But besides that, I don't anticipate, you know, much else.
You heard Mr. Hopkins testify that we're going to have a dumpster area that's going to be enclosed. You saw that?
Yes.
And that's adequate for your use, that dumpster area?
I think so.
correct? We talked about the lighting, we talked about transportation. I just want to make sure we've covered the rest. You're comfortable that the proposed parking that we're now providing is adequate for your use?
I do.
And that's with maximum capacity?
I do.
All right. And then I think, Mr. Chair, that was all I had. Charlie or Jen, if I missed anything, I'm sure you'll tell me.
Charlie, do you think it's sufficient if we did have that once in a blue moon full bus coming in, there's adequate, you know, space for them to make a turn into the driveway?
Yeah, so they did have a turning template in there showing that a K-turn could be made with like a delivery vehicle and I believe a school bus, or, you know, a delivery vehicle that's approximately the size of a school bus. Most of it sounds like it's minibuses, for
Yeah.
the 10 to 25 students. That's a couple a day. I don't anticipate that being an issue. The larger school bus, it sounds like that's for, once or twice a year, maybe, a couple more than that, for larger capacity. If it's one turning movement every once in a while, I don't really foresee it being an issue. I think if it was, we had multiple large school buses coming in and out of here, and there was turnover, and it was like a 2-hour session, and then they're leaving, and then the next 2-hour session's coming, that's kind of where our question and concern was, because it is tight with the
Yeah.
congestion, and the aisle widths and things like that. But based on their testimony, I don't have an issue with it.
Mr. Chair, is there a bus drop-off zone where children get off the bus? And would that area be paved?
Yeah, can we put back A18, John? You didn't finish going through this, by the way. Do you want to finish this?
I don't want to hold people up in terms of time.
And Walter, can you know this? We have one more operational person who is actually on site more frequently. She can answer that question if we could bring her up, because she wanted to just add a couple other points.
Yeah, sure. Let's do that.
We did not have her affirm, Dave.
Do you affirm the testimony you'll give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please state your name for the record and spell your last. Let me sit down.
Thank you. My name is Chaya Bender, B-E-N-D-E-R.
And Chaya, C-H-A-A-Y.
Oh, I thought just
Right?
spelled my last name. Yeah, you got it.
All right, you have to speak loudly into the
Okay, so first let me address the school.
Saku,
Bus.
maybe identify like her responsibilities, who she is.
What is your role with the school?
I'm the director of the Special Children's Center.
You see this,
Yeah, so where's the house?
you know how to press that button, top one, right there. There.
There.
Show, the question was where
the house, right?
Right, that's the house.
They're pulling over here.
So
The bus
where you
is-
have the red dot that
Parking.
just moved, the buses pull in over there,
Pulling over there.
they stop there,
That's
let the
parking.
kids off,
Yeah,
and
they
then,
stop there and let the kids off.
and then
into
where
the
do they
house.
go after they drop the kids off? How do they
The
get around?
buses,
You
they
have
go-
to speak loud enough for them to hear.
Sorry. Then the buses go in and they turn around.
And how many buses did,
All right, Sal, getting back to the original question, where the children are dropped off, is that a paved area?
is that,
I'm pretty sure it's paved.
it's not, what is it?
Is that paved?
It's gravel.
It's gravel, yeah, it would have to
Okay.
be, that's actually, I believe in ADA, it needs to be paved.
Yeah, if you
I
have
mean,
wheelchairs.
We have disabled
not
children here,
gravel.
right? Is that what we're talking about? We have disabled children in wheelchairs?
Are there any children in wheelchairs?
Or
Currently, there's no
walkers?
children with wheelchairs or walkers. Unfortunately, we feel bad about it, but it's not, we don't bring them here because,
So Sal, I guess to clarify, so they are proposing a paved parking stall up by that's ADA compliant. I get the question for a drop-off zone, right? Like, you're not gonna drop off every single student into that handicap space. Perhaps adjacent to that, maybe they could pave a loading zone or an aisle with a loading zone, just so it's dedicated, so if people are coming off in wheelchairs, they have a paved surface to get into the dwelling that's to be converted. Is that kind of the question that you're going with on that?
That's fine, we
Yes.
can work
Yeah.
with Charlie to
Yeah.
play
And then
that
I just
out.
want to
They're not
clarify
the
too,
front.
and Sal, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So in the aerial that's shown right now, so on the road side of the barn, there's a number of vehicles that are kind of parked 90 degrees there. The intent isn't to utilize that for parking. Those cars would be relocated to the parking spaces
Yeah.
that are being proposed on the other side of the barn, the 10 parking spaces?
yeah, I don't know why those cars are there, that's why I got them.
So what's the answer?
Yes, those cars will not be there, they'll be relocated to this parking.
So, I think there's ample room for a paved aisle and a loading space to be provided where those cars are there right now. And I think I can work with Mr. Hopkin to find some suitable solution to satisfy the board's concerns with that as part of resolution compliance. Or if you want to see it, if they're coming back, I think it's something simple they can probably take care of and revise with the plans for you to see if this is going to another meeting, but I'll defer to you guys on that.
And just talking about those, so where those cars are right there, that will not be parking for cars?
Yes,
correct.
yes, that's why I got thrown, that's not
Yes.
parking for cars.
So delivery trucks would be able to
Yes.
use that area
Yes.
Yes.
for their,
That's where people park informally now, but that the intention is to move all the parking away from that building.
okay.
They don't park there when the buses pull up, actually. You pull up, there's a space there, and it's pretty safe unloading.
Okay.
You also have more familiarity with the after-school program?
Yeah, I just wanted to explain the after-school program a little. So, like was said before, is that a lot of parents work, and the children that we actually service are from the most challenging children. Many of them, if left alone or like not having, a staff really there with them, are extremely challenging. So this program is meant to give respite to parents. It's meant to give the kids a great time, as meaningful as possible, but also allowing the parents to work and have a life and do what they need to do, and then get to enjoy their child after hours because they were able to take care of things. So in the barn, there's actually like workshop rooms. So like you said, it's very cold. Running back and forth or playing outside is not happening right now. There's actually some big rooms and some smaller rooms. We have a sensory room where we have almost like Disney, textured sand, and the kids have a whole, I don't even know how to put it, but a whole place where they could build, and they have toys and everything they could build with sand, and a lot of kids spend their time there. Up on top, we have a very large room where they spend time. There's kids who spend time in the barn. There's heated rooms. You can't heat a barn, we learned, because you'll kill the horses after we're putting in the heating system. We found that out, so that went down. But there's individual rooms that are all heated. There's another spot. So the after-school is definitely spread out, and the after-school is farm usage. Like, they come on the farm, and they enjoy the farm for what our farm offers. So with the animals or with different activities. So there's definitely room for them to be. They're definitely not stuck in one place or in a space that doesn't fit them.
And I wanted to clarify one other point, just to make sure it's clear. There are no dormitories, and no one will stay on site after hours to sleep or otherwise.
No one will stay on site to sleep or otherwise. We have cameras on the animals that need to be watched at night. If they're delivering and things are going on, we have special cameras in the stalls. We don't have anyone living on it.
And no bedrooms are proposed in any of the buildings?
No,
Anything else you want to add?
I think that's it.
Sal, would you be able to address the hours of the lighting?
Yeah, I too apologize about this lighting. I wish someone would have just called us. I'm going to give all our neighbors my phone number because there's no reason for lights that bother anyone. We will take them down tomorrow, and we will put up now. We have to get your approval. But we'll put up lights that don't bother anyone. We never want to bother anyone. We just put up the brightest lights because we wanted to light the place up so it should be safe. We didn't know, nothing, so innocently, and really, really. I apologize. So we could talk about shutting off the lights at 8 o'clock, and I could say we will, but I really want to have lights that never bother anyone. So they don't have to have a time to go off because they don't bother the neighbors. So I'd love to work with the board and
Okay, so what is
department.
the bottom line? Do you think 8 o'clock is going to be?
We could close it at 8 o'clock. Now we will close the annoying lights at 8 o'clock, yes.
Can we just talk about the lights on the back side of the barn, though?
Yeah, we're going to take them
Like, you
off.
don't really have activity back there, which
I'll
would
take
be
them.
taking place, during the dark hours. Would it be possible to maybe, instead of just having those lights on, have them on some kind of motion sensor, so if someone's back there, the lights will come on, and if there's nothing happening back there, they'll stay off, because that's kind of closest to your neighbors.
I texted my maintenance to please take down the back 2 lights tomorrow, and we'll deal with what we put up. There's no reason they have to be there, and we're so sorry.
Well, security, so you'd want to have them come on if there's an emergency.
I maybe wouldn't take them down, but maybe I would make them motion sensors.
Yes.
So
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
So if
Very good idea.
If nothing's back there, by the way, that was Shari's idea, I'm just stealing
I'll
it.
give-
I'm
sorry.
stealing the thunder.
She
giving
talks
you
loud.
credit.
Yeah.
No,
Is that tree related?
no, but she's also our lighting person.
Yeah, so and I would just suggest with that too, Mr. Chairman, so motion sensor, but also after 8 PM on a dimmed level, right? Because
Yeah.
they don't need to be at 100% intensity at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if they're for security purposes, I think they can
it's your
come on, be
Yeah.
somewhat dimmer. And then, Sal, and it may be a follow-up question for Walt. So the barn in the back, there's a note on the plan about the existing septic system to be upgraded. Is that because it's old and it needs to be modernized, or are we upgrading it because it's providing more demand? And if it is providing more demand, what exactly is it providing more demand for? If it's a barn with farm activities? That was really intended for the building in the front, so we're going to have to compare the residential sewage that's generated compared to what's eventually, hopefully, approved tonight. Once we have that number, then I can go into the health department and say, here's what we were approved for, and compare the flows. If it requires an upgrade, then we will. So I think that, I just want to beat it home. So the testimony was the dwelling in the front, that's where the classroom space is. There is class-related activities that occur in the backyard barn, but is there any dedicated classroom space where, you know, we're doing more than 25 students in the front, also in the back, or we can expand beyond 25 students in the back there? We didn't, and the reason I asked the question is we didn't really get any architectural or floor plans for that back barn.
I was about to ask that when she started
Are there
talking about
bathrooms in the
different
back? That's,
There's a bathroom in the barn, yes.
Okay.
One bathroom in the
Okay.
barn.
Yeah, I was going to ask that too, Charlie, because once she started saying about rooms, what goes on back there? What's there?
Yeah, maybe Sal, we can hear a little bit more on that, because,
We
Yeah.
can describe, yeah, and whatever we do, if this is approved, we have to get the Board of Health approval on the septic system, so they're going to inspect, and Walt has to do the calculations. But would you describe you want to hear more
Yeah.
about the...
no, and what I'm just trying to avoid, Sal, is, you know, once you get into the septic design level with the Board of Health, there's like maximum growth based off of gross floor area. So the septic system can be over-designed for conservative purposes at the Board of Health level. Well, when it gets back to the town, it kind of creates like a question mark and a gray cloud when we say it's going to be, you know, 15 students, and next thing, the septic system that's approved by the Board of Health now says 50 students or something like that. So I just kind of want to hear a little bit more for the record purposes, just so we know what's in that building and what goes on back there.
So the building has 30 horse stalls and a very, very large indoor riding arena. And then it has like 4 smaller size rooms that are like, they were offices, but they're like, you know, they're not so small. And then there's a bathroom. And then upstairs, there's like one big, large, very large room that's used for workshops, and it's actually nice because you could look down into the riding arena. So that was the purpose originally, was when parents came to see their kids ride. So it's just a nice room to hang out in.
So Sal, it's safe to say, in totality, for the site as a whole, we're talking about a maximum of 25 students during the daytime activities, and then up to 40, 45 for like, including the after-school activities, and that's the site as a whole.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I just have,
That's the barn building that you're referring to.
It's humongous, yeah.
Yeah, John?
I just have a question. I believe the prior testimony had stated that there may be students on the weekend. I'm not aware of any,
Yeah, Sundays
any districts that operate on the weekend, so I was wondering if we could get some clarity on the days of operations.
Yeah, so Sunday as well is not school, it's respite programs. So same as after school, give the families a break, give the kids a great time, and they come out for just some fun activities with their friends and staff.
And that was like 3-hour period?
Yeah.
What 3 hours?
Wow.
Can we say exactly what 3 hours?
Starts at 11.
So 11 to 2?
Yeah, 11 to 2.
The only thing that I'm looking there is, I like
It's
the
11 to
idea,
3, sorry.
but how are we going to handle if there is a large, because you're not going to have buses taking the kids on Sunday, or will you have buses taking?
We do have buses on Sunday.
Okay.
The buses pick them up. and
Yeah,
bring
because
them
I
back.
just don't want to have 40 cars coming in and out on
Right. But
a
it's
Sunday.
It's
on a
11 to, oh,
Well, yeah,
sorry.
they want the flexibility to go to 11 to 3,
Yeah,
a 4-hour
not the
period.
4
The
hour.
intent was 11 to 2, but that program may need the 4th hour.
Yeah,
But
just
that
wanna
would be
leave
it, no
time.
more than that.
Okay.
Are there any special events that are planned on the property, graduations or ceremonies or anything of the such where
No.
either parents or family members of the students are on the property?
No, we usually use our main building for that. The
Yeah, so
space
if
is
they have
more,
graduation or anything, you'll do
Yeah.
that at the main building.
yeah, the space accommodate it more.
We talk a little more about the, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
About the fire pits. Do you anticipate that there'll be any, like, things being done in the evening where my fire pit I use at night, roast
regular-
marshmallows and stuff like that. I don't
Yeah,
use it during the
6:30,
day.
the program's closed, but the farm,
So what's the fire pits for?
I'm
The
saying.
fire pits, the fire pits.
Right, I'm just saying, first of all, the fire pits are those barbecue ones that hang and you do barbecues on them. They're not like, they're not in the ground.
So the fire pits are for barbecuing?
Yeah, they're for barbecuing.
Okay. So like, they're
Oh,
grills?
damn it.
Yeah, they're almost like grills, yeah.
They're grills, they're like, they hang and they have a grill on them.
Okay, but
They're not
get
built in.
back to one of my original question. Do you anticipate any evening events?
No.
So nothing really past the after-school time of 5:30?
Right.
6:30, she
6:30.
did say 6:30 on
6:30.
occasion.
6:30,
Yeah.
6:30.
Yeah.
6:30.
How many staff are there how many staff are there for the farm itself, outside of the teachers?
Like 4,
Okay.
4, some of them are part-time.
Now, are they certified as well for the students that'll be there?
Yeah, we have PATH certified, all our
Okay.
trainers are PATH certified with
Perfect.
our horses and like the highest.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else for operational?
No.
No.
Further questions?
I'm dismissed.
Okay, Sal, unless, I'll check with my professionals, maybe we will take a quick break, because I would like to confer with them, so what we'll probably do is after the break, we'll probably get Christine's testimony, and then I want to get at least the public up, so we have questions for you for the, whether we vote or not. So we will take a 5-minute break.
The board will now take a 5-minute break and reconvene at 8:40 PM.
Okay, Eileen, we're back.
The meeting will now reconvene.
Sal, real quick, I told you we had a couple members had one more question for you operational, like
Is it about the school or after school? 'Cause we'll bring
what
up-
was it, after school or?
Just want to clarify from Ms. Bender, something that she said earlier. If that's okay? All right. Ms. Bender, when you were talking about the barn itself, and you were talking about the loft area, you said you thought it was good because the parents could come in and watch their children.
It was designed previously
Previously, it
for
was designed.
parents to come in
Okay.
and watch their children. So it's a cool room that overlooks.
Just
the-
wanted to clarify that, because
Yeah.
you said the parents could come in and watch. Is the school tied into the vocational school?
So the 8:45 to 2:30 is the vocational school. And
mean,
then there's after school, like farm activities.
So, in lots of vocational school settings, students spend some of their time in regular classroom situation and some of the time in the VOTEC.
Right, so this is not,
These students are not doing both, they're just strictly in the vocational.
it's not typical VOTEC because the kids are really very more special.
Their
needs.
classification is higher.
Yeah, so they're not like learning culinary skills in a VOTEC school and then going to work somewhere else. This is really their home.
Understood that. Will students in the vocational schools be coming out to learn how to work, teach in that type of situation? Is there a tie-in there?
From the district
Yes,
as a partnership.
yes,
It's not in the plans now,
okay.
but it's a nice idea.
Well, because that adds more people coming in.
Right.
That's the only reason I ask.
Right,
But they're limited regardless in 24.
students.
Students,
Right.
not at the after school.
No, not after school, but they're limited to 24 students in their regular day program.
As far as the people that are there, but if it's like a student-teacher situation, I don't know.
The
I don't know how the district
Through the
looks at that.
Department of Education, their maximum number of students is 24.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's 12 teachers for the 24.
Unless
The 2 to
you
1.
said, I think their testimony was, generally, it's 1 teacher per 2 students, unless their IEP demands 1-to-1,
One-on-one, yes.
then it will be 1 teacher to 1 student, if that's what the IEP dictates, correct?
Is that correct?
And
Yes.
And their educational program, what they're actually doing in school is dictated by the IEP.
By the IEP and in a state-approved curriculum.
So most of these students, you're teaching life skills, like you're not teaching
Yes.
calculus, right? Like
Right.
you're teaching life skills
We're
to
teaching
them.
life skills, like let's say with the chickens, they collect the eggs, they put them into dozens, they use them, and a lot of functional math
Right.
and skills.
I don't have any children, so I never had people in school. What is IEP? Can someone explain
It's an
that?
Is there educational plan?
It's basically when you have a student that's categorized in special education, there's a child study team that evaluates that individual's performance and creates a specific plan for that student, whether it's they need a para with them or they're good with one, like two-on-one, they need one-on-one, they need specific training. It's very specific to what skill sets that they need help with and how to go about that, and that's evaluated on an annual basis with the child study team, the parent, the teachers, everybody.
And just to add clarity to that, so if the state did, if they went to the state to seek an amendment to increase the capacity of students that they're allowed to have, they'd still need to come back to the board because the board's use variance approval is conditioned on the testimony and the representations made tonight. So, they can't just go to the state, seek to increase their capacity, and then have more students on the site. They'd have to come back to the board because they testified to a certain maximum amount of students and after-school activities. So I just want to put that on the record for clarity.
That's agreed.
Okay,
That's all I had, thank you.
okay, Sal, we'll move on to Christine then. Planning testimony.
Hello.
Hello, stranger.
How are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I know you've testified before this board, you're a licensed professional planner, and your license is in good standing.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, do you need to hear any?
No,
Thank you.
I can almost recite it.
29 years, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Okay, so good evening, Chairman and members of the board. For the record, Christine Nazaro-Cafone. And as you know, the reason we're here is not because schools are not allowed in the ARE 6, but because they are conditionally allowed, and we don't meet all of the conditions, which means we need a D3 conditional use. We are also asking for a D1 use variance to have multiple buildings on the property, even though that's an existing condition, right? Whether this application is approved or not, that condition is, there's multiple buildings on the property. So I just want to start out by reading from the municipal land use law what an inherently beneficial use is. An inherently beneficial use means a use which is universally considered of value to the community because it fundamentally serves the public good and promotes the general welfare. Such uses includes, but is not limited to, a hospital, school, child care center, group home, or a wind, solar, or photovoltaic energy facility or structure. So it is uncontroverted that schools are an inherently beneficial use. As you heard the testimony from our operator, this school will deal with those populations that are so sensitive that they cannot be treated or be, accommodated in regular school that we would send, children to in public school. So therefore, this, in my opinion, is amongst the highest order of inherently beneficial uses. So when the board is evaluating a D3 variance, a conditional use variance, you're not determining should a school go in this location. Legislatively, the governing body has already decided that. The test that we are here to decide is absent compliance with those conditional use standards. Is this still an appropriate location? The other thing I would tell the board is that based on my review of those conditional use standards are generated for a use that is much more intensive than this. And the reason I say that is because if you look at criteria E, or condition E, the minimum lot area for an elementary school shall be 10 acres plus 1 additional acre for each 100 pupils. The minimum lot for an intermediate school or trade vocational school shall be 20 acres plus 1 additional acre for each 100 pupils. The minimum area for a high school shall be 30 acres plus 1 additional acre for each 100 pupils. So that's how we came up with our 31 acres. But when I read that, I look at this as these standards were put in place to govern public schools with hundreds of children at them. As you heard from the testimony tonight, that is not at all the use that you have before you tonight. You have a use that's going to have, during the daytime typical school hours, 24 students. That's what they're licensed for from the state of New Jersey. We will have an after-school program also for special needs students that will rise to about 30 or 35. So in no way, shape, or form do we ever get to the intensity of school that, in my opinion, was contemplated in your conditional use standards. With that being said, as Planner Beam pointed out, we do violate certain of those conditional use standards, so it's important that the board understands which ones of the variances are D-variances. So I don't know that we violate the lot area, because I think that 30 acre comes up to a high school. So to the extent we need the lot area, because it says for an elementary school it should only be 10 acres. So to the extent we need that, that is a conditional use, we'll ask for it. Also, the buffers. We talked about the buffer. If you've appeared in Howell, you know that buffers are this community is extremely buffer sensitive. So, but in this particular instance, we know that when we're doing applications, we're usually planning to make sure that our use is buffering the adjacent residential uses or farms. Here, we have a farm on our property. So we're not compliant, but the physical plant of this site doesn't change in conjunction with this application. It's really an adaptive reuse of the existing structures on the property. So that, to me, is a difference with a distinction that the board can take note of from other applications where you need buffer relief. But that is also a conditional use requirement. The parking. We believe we are going to meet the parking requirement for our demand, right? We're providing 24 spaces, but because we don't have a designated area for parking and bus delivery, and that's the way the ordinance reads, is that you have to have it. Now, we did make a willingness to work with your professionals. If we do that, it will likely increase the lot coverage. We're already seeking a bulk variance for that. And when I get done with the conditional uses, I'm going to testify to what I believe to be the bulk variances. So I'm just going to stay on the D variances for now, for the D3. So that's the parking, and to the extent a bus drop-off and loading area is not designated, we would violate that. One of the other conditional use is that the driveway shall not open onto a public street within 150 feet of an intersection. Again, we are offset from that intersection of Victory Road, not too far, but that's an existing condition on the subject property. So anybody doing anything, if you were doing a school here, you would either have to relocate that, or here we're taking advantage of the existing driveway. And I think the low intensity of this compared to the typical school, I think it's appropriate. And then the other conditional use that we violate is for the sewer. So connection to sanitary sewer is required and septic is prohibited. That's one of the conditional use standards. Again, we are continuing to rely on a septic system, and I think given the fact that we are very limited in the amount of students that we will have, and this is a very specialized school. And even if the applicant were desirous and they were able to get a license from the state to have more students on site, they would have to come back to the board. When you deal with a D variance, I am certain that Mr. Baer, if this application is moved favorably, is going to have all of these things that we testify to tonight in his resolution, and I'm sure he'll probably make a reference that any testimony proffered by the applicant, whether it's in the resolution or not, becomes part of the application. So, and that's just, that's just land use 101. If we were to come back for any more students, we've got to come back to the board. So that, to me, is the D variance relief that we're requesting. In 2022, when you did your land use element here, you actually made certain modifications to your conditional use standards. You struck 2 provisions and you added 1. So when I look at those conditions that you struck the condition that a school must be licensed by the state of New Jersey, and you struck the condition that the curriculum of the proposed school shall be approved by the New Jersey Department of Education. But then you added a condition expressly prohibiting faculty housing. Dormitories were already prohibited. And then in 2022, when you looked at those in the master plan, you added an additional prohibition for faculty housing. So to me, when you look at what you don't want here and the intensity of your schools, this is not proposing any dormitory housing, and it's not proposing any faculty housing. And if the applicant were ever desirous of having anything like that, they're right back before this board for a D variance. So to me, the conditional use, and there's only 5 of them that we violate, we're really predominantly compliant with them, and even in the conditional uses. Illumination for night athletic activities shall be shielded from view from adjoining streets and residential areas, and a glare study should be required. That's for night activities, right? So in the conditional use standards, you contemplate night activities because you contemplate a full public school that would likely have perhaps athletic fields. So we're not proposing that. My point in telling you that is that I believe that the use that's before you is quite less intense than your conditional use standards. So those are the 5 that we violate. Again, the lot area, I don't think we violated. I don't think we need 31 acres because that was the 30 acres is associated with the high school. Oh, and the setbacks. The setbacks are also part of the conditional use standards. Mr. Hopkin testified to them, and they are also, again, relating to existing conditions. So it's the lot area, the setbacks, the parking, to the extent we need that, the driveway, the septic, and the buffering. Those are the conditional use standards. In addition to that, we are seeking a number of bulk variances, right? We have the 30-foot circulation aisle, the gravel versus pavement, the loading area that we're not providing, the not providing sidewalks, and the violation of building and lot coverage. And the building coverage is an existing condition. So Mr. Hopkins testified, and he described to you where on site that those bulks were occurring. So those are the C variances, which have a little bit different standard of proof. But again, I provided the testimony on the D variances for the unmet conditional use standards. I think that absent compliance with all of those, this still remains an appropriate bucolic location. I think if we were asked to come up with a use to host a site like this, this would be, I think, certainly, even though we don't have to demonstrate it's particularly suited because it's an inherently beneficial use and it's not part of the conditional use standards, I think this site is particularly suitable. So that leaves us with a burden of proof for the negative criteria. And the negative criteria...
Could you just, you mentioned the D1, the multiple buildings, but just touch on
Yes.
that before you give the negative criteria.
Okay, so the D1 is because we have multiple structures, and that's an existing condition. There's 5 structures on this today, and I think rather than looking at that as a negative, that allows the occupants and the prospective students to really enjoy the entirety of the farm and the spread out on the farm, and it certainly creates adequate space for the farm, for the school to be operated here. And then when you look at the stated purpose of the ARE 6 zone, and the purpose of the ARE 1, 3, 4, and 6 zones, it is to minimize the, and I'm reading right from your ordinance, so this is the stated purpose in section 188-69. The purpose of the ARE 1, 3, 4, and 6 zones is to minimize the impacts of development in areas located outside of the centers identified in the township's master plan. The goals include preservation of rural and agricultural uses and preservation of rural character. Many areas include significant environmental constraints, including wetlands, floodplains, rare and endangered species habitats, aquifer recharge areas, and high-quality watersheds. So the takeaway from that is the goal includes the preservation of rural agricultural uses, which this does, and preservation of rural character. So I think when you look at the impact on the zone plan and the impact of what was envisioned and contemplated by Howell in your ARE zones, specifically ARE 6, because that's where this is located, I don't think any of the relief rises to the level of a substantial detriment. In fact, you can look at this as a way to preserve the existing farming activity because it's going to be so intrinsically linked to how the school will operate. So in my opinion, this will not have a substantial detriment on this purpose of the ARE 6 or the zone plan here in Howell, or the master plan, which was last reviewed and examined in 2022 when the conditional use standards were specifically looked at for schools, and I don't think that this is going to have a substantial negative impact whatsoever on the functioning and intent of the ARE 6 zone. And as far as the bulk variances, I think that the board could look at them under the C1 and C2 section of the statute. And when I say that, the C1 and C2, I'm talking about the municipal land use law, right? That's not unique to Howell, and it's just the two criteria for granting bulk variances or C variances. And I say C1 because there are existing conditions, right? Like it's not practical to take those existing structures down to comply with the 150-foot front yard setback. So it's also being exacerbated by the right-of-way dedication along Lakewood Farmingdale Road. So those, to me, are C1. Again, the building coverage, that's an existing condition. Whether this application is approved or not, that nonconformity prevails on the site. So I think that, and then the sidewalks, the applicant is not proposing sidewalks. There's no sidewalks out here on the road, so that, to me, is a C2. So statutorily, I think when you look at the purpose, this certainly promotes the general welfare. We know that this is an inherently beneficial use. That's uncontroverted. So certainly criteria A of the land use law is advanced, promoting general welfare. I think it's criteria G of the land use law that talks about promoting a variety of uses, sufficient, yes, for a variety of uses. This certainly preserves an agricultural use as well as provides for a school. So I think that those purposes of the land use law would be advanced if the bulk variance relief was granted. And then as far as the impact on the zone plan, I already talked about the stated purpose, but the board can certainly impose reasonable conditions on an inherently beneficial use to mitigate and balance any impacts. And I think we've already talked about having no large buses on site overnight or staying on site after they drop off, having no spillover of the lighting at them. What that means when we say no spillover, that just means none of the light on our site can escape or sneak off of our property onto adjoining properties. So no spillover of lights, a limited number of students, and a limited number of hours. To me, those are all reasonable conditions that the board can use, and that's one of the tests, right, to seek a balancing test when you're dealing with inherently beneficial uses, even though the use here is allowed. So it's a little bit of a different test. The inherently beneficial use comes more into the negative criteria. I think it's appropriate for the board to consider it, that those could be reasonable conditions aimed to mitigate any negative criteria. So that's a lot, right? It's a lot of testimony quickly. I know you have another application that you're going to try to hear tonight, so I did my very best to streamline it.
You did a great job.
But there's a lot to say, right? There's a lot,
Yeah.
2 D variances, D3, D1, and a number of bulk variances, those Cs that I identified. So there's certainly a lot to say, but I do think that we meet our statutory burden of proof for all the D and C variances, and they can be granted with no substantial detriment to the zone plan or the public good.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have nothing to add.
Okay. Questions from the board? Seeing none?
Yeah,
Okay,
Mr. Chair, I'll
Charles, I'm
just add one thing. So they are asking for relief from putting sidewalks in along the public right-of-way. So I take no exception to it. If you look at the aerial, there's no sidewalk in proximity, and based on the makeup of the land uses in the vicinity, and obviously the proposed operations, I don't know that we want to promote pedestrian, walking on a highway,
Yeah.
busy road like this. They do need a waiver to pay into the fund. We can't waive the payment into the fund, but the applicant can always go to the governing body to seek relief of making that contribution. I just want to get that on the record. I don't think we need the sidewalk, but they need the waiver to pay into the fund, and then ultimately, if they want to seek relief of making the contribution to the fund, they got to go to the governing body for that. That's all I have otherwise.
Okay, I don't think we have any further questions from the board, so Sal, do you want to, let's open to public now? Okay.
Make a motion, Mr. Chair, to open the public.
Second by Anne Marie, all in favor?
Oh, yeah, I have the next case.
Eileen?
The meeting will now be open to the public. If you'd like to say something, please come up and state your name and your home address.
Hi, my name's Michael McKay. I live at 756 Lakewood Farmingdale Road.
Mike?
Yep.
He swear the testimony you give will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Always.
Witness is sworn.
Okay, thanks.
I know she just said that it's not going to impact the area having this here, but she doesn't live in the area. I do. And let me tell you, a lot of what was said today, it was so hard to keep my mouth shut because it's blatant lies. Over the summer, they had choir out till 10, 11 o'clock at night, a choir band. They had stadium lights brought in with gas-powered lights that were 20 feet in the air. They have fires, bonfires out in the middle of the day, at night with the s'mores going on. There's cars constantly going in and out of there all day long. The town almost crucified me because I wanted to add on to my house for my mother, who's had to live with me, is in a wheelchair. I couldn't even get a variance to even get an addition on my house for my mother who has to live with me, so I have to pay someone else to take care of her somewhere else. The board in this town, I moved to this town and specifically this area, ARE6, because it was supposed to be agricultural, it wasn't supposed to be built up, it was supposed to be farmland where you didn't have to live on top of each other. And once this little bit of sliver goes, it's going to go and it's going to keep going. And we know what's going to happen, and I know nobody's going to understand, no one's going to agree with me, and he especially said it when I first got here. He said, I don't really care because he already knows it's in the bag. He said, it's going to be done today no matter what. So apparently he already knows your decision before you even made it. That was his words to me when I got here.
I didn't even speak to you.
I'm going to stop you. That was not,
That's
no.
wrong.
This is a record. This is a legal record. He did not say that.
Okay. Yeah, he did.
And nobody on this
No,
board
he didn't.
has made any decision on this before this meeting.
Okay, and the lights, first of all, the lights, I have pictures of them. They don't look anything like what they showed up there. They are so bright, and they're on all night long, and they didn't, the only reason why they brought this before in the first place was because they were getting so many so many violations, code violations. But they didn't try to do the right thing when they came here. They tried to sneak it in and then got caught, and then they came to you to have this done. They didn't do this like they came to you like they were going to do the right thing. That's not what this is about. And if it had been, I would be different about it. I really would. You know, their sign's wrong. Like everything they do, they try to sneak through. And I have a problem with that because if you're going to hold me up to the same standard and tell me I can't build, I can't add, I can't do this because I'm a non-conforming lot, but you're going to let them. Well, if you're going to let them, then that's going to tell everyone in the town not to listen to what you say anyway. Just put it up. And if you have to get a couple of violations, oh, well, pay it because you know what? Nothing's going to happen to you anyway. Because that's what we keep seeing time and time again. One thing after another. And it's really sad when because now I'm at the point where I either have to sell my business, fire all my guys, and move. Because if this town becomes something I didn't want to move here for, why would I stay? Why would I stay?
So are you operating a business out of your house?
No, I own a business, I said. I own a business. So if I own a business and my guys who work for me, it's just not fair. They'd have no jobs then, and I'd have to move somewhere else. And it's really frustrating. People move to this town for a certain reason. It's so it wasn't built up, because everywhere else is built up. Every town's, sky-rised everywhere. They're paved everything. Howell's one of the few towns left that isn't done. And once you give a little inch, they're going to take a mile. And who's going to watch to make sure there's only 24 kids? Because there's more than 24 kids.
Who's they?
Who's they? We need to stop.
Well, I'm saying...
I feel like you're going down a dangerous
the
path.
owners of the building. Sorry, the owners of the property who are proposing this in front of the board.
Okay.
That's what I mean when I say they. And that's all I mean, because it's not what you're thinking. I have family members that are that way. I'm not that at all. At all, not me at all. And I have kids two of my kids have IEPs. So I know a lot about IEPs. I've dealt with it their whole entire life. And let me tell you, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that these laws were put in for a reason. They're put there so it doesn't change. And then people come by and think they can eke it, take it apart, little by little by little by little. And as you keep chipping it away, it's a slippery slope. All of a sudden, you got everywhere thinks they could do it, and we're going to have them everywhere.
So
and that part of town is really dangerous. I don't know if you know that. Coming out of that driveway is such a tight turn. They're going 50, 60 miles an hour on that road, whipping past there. That is a very dangerous area, and it's a real tight turn coming out of that driveway. If you have to make a left or right, it's like almost a hairpin turn. It is very tight. I mean, I live there. I see it every day.
It's a 90-degree intersection.
No, I'm talking about when they're pulling out of their driveway.
I understand. Okay, so
I'm just going to state for the record, the site has 0 violations on it. So that's totally not true.
Well, that's what I was told.
Okay, well, I don't know who told you that, but here's the code enforcement officer, and he's telling me there's no violations.
Well, I was told the building department that.
Okay, well, that's not code, that's zoning, that's not why we're here, and this board has 0 jurisdiction over the building department. Secondly, if you wanted to put an addition on your house and you were told it's not conforming, you could have made an application to this board as well, but you didn't. They're here asking for relief. They didn't do this and then ask for forgiveness. No, they did not.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, they're here asking for permission, as opposed to other sites in town that have come before us on a code complaint where they're here because they did something they weren't supposed to do. That didn't happen here.
How many times have people complained?
I'm not getting into a debate with you, I'm clarifying the record.
7, 8?
Secondly, my question, my statement is the same. If anybody wants to make an application for anything, there's a mechanism to do so. And that's why this board exists. Otherwise, this board wouldn't be here because they're here to deal with things that are non-compliant. Otherwise, everybody would go to the planning board. But that's not why this board exists. This board exists for applicants to come and make applications for variances, which is allowed by law.
I understand that.
And at the end of the day, the information that you're providing, you're claiming they're not being honest, but what you've provided is not honest either. They have no violations. They're here because they're asking for permission. The driveway intersects at the street at a 90-degree angle. There's no hairpin situation happening. I'm looking at the map.
I live there.
I understand, but I'm looking at a map. I know how to read a map. And so at the end of, that's 90 degrees.
Yeah, when you're coming out of their driveway with the trees on both sides of that fence.
That's not hairpin, that's a turn. And at the end of the day, I feel like that's why I specifically brought up earlier that the lighting requirements, which is why I made the engineer go through the parameters, it doesn't mean that you can't see the lights ever. It just means that if you're looking down at the ground, the spillage doesn't go over the property line, which the applicant has committed to working with us to ensure. Not to mention, both operators apologized and said that they would be more than happy to work with us to make sure that the situation would not happen in the future.
Well, I have pictures of the lights, and they don't look anything like theirs. And they are not, they are super bright.
But they've already committed to correct that. I'm just gonna clarify, because the pictures, in fact, I'll bring them up again, were pictures that I took based on the single complaint that we got, and the only one in the system. If you complain to another department, I have no way of knowing that, nor would I go out on a complaint that you complained to the building department. So the building department may go out, and they're only going to look at whether there were permits pulled, if it was done correctly. They're not looking for the statutory requirement with regards to bleeding lights. That would be something that code enforcement would go out with. And when we receive that complaint, the pictures that you see here, I mean, I don't doctor the pictures, and it's very similar to what I have here. And that doesn't show what the candlelight power is, where it is. Yes, it's visible. I'm not going to tell you that it's not visible. From a farm that probably wasn't in very much use a couple of years ago, where it was probably pitch black, to now where there's somebody on the property who now put some kind of lighting on it, yeah, there's going to be a difference. Whether that meets or doesn't meet the statutory requirement with regards to bleeding off the property or the intensity, that's a completely different topic. So they're allowed to put lights. Yes, you're going to now see lights on buildings. Whether it bleeds off, listen, like I said, these are the pictures that I took that night. I was there based on the single complaint that I got in the system. I went to investigate, although visible, not bleeding. And you're further down the road. So even if they were,
I'm right diagonal from that.
here, I'll pull up the map
I
for
can
you.
show you from my house. I can show you where my house is. Sit in my.
So, and just,
Don't do stuff on your phone, because then we have to keep your phone.
But the lights, we've agreed, we're going to address the lights.
Yeah.
In fact, we've agreed to turn them off at 8 o'clock. We've agreed to work with your professionals. We're going to actually improve the lighting even more severe or more strict than the ordinance provides.
Right, so what you're showing, and I understand, even though I've told you 3 times, you can't show it, because otherwise now we have to keep your phone. That doesn't show me anything. It doesn't show what the foot candles are on the ground. Yep, I can see it. Doesn't mean they're in violation. So what I'm telling you is that you complained. He went out, he took pictures. They're here. They've committed to making the situation better.
And how long ago did we have that conversation? How many months?
I didn't have a conversation with you.
That wasn't even made. That's what I was getting at.
You were the one that filed the complaint, no?
No,
No.
no.
Well,
I
then-
spoke to him in private about it, though. Yes, I did do that.
When was that?
I don't know. It was months ago.
It wasn't me. The first time I came across that complaint was the one that was placed online.
So, and I didn't do it, correct?
Correct.
So, Mr. Chair, I would just respectfully say that the fact that you can see light on the property doesn't mean that the site is in violation. And the applicant has committed to working with Charlie's office to ensure compliance. They've also just talked about turning the lights off behind the barn, making them motion sensor, having them at lower intensity. But at the same time, let me be very clear, whether there's a school here or not, the farm is allowed to operate. And by the way, they're allowed to light however they want, and we have no jurisdiction over it, at all. So if this was just an active farm that worked 24 hours, there's nothing we could do about it, and the lights would be worse than they are right now.
So I'm allowed to get, so on record, then I could go and get 20-foot stadium lights and point them everywhere?
Do you have 6 acres?
No.
Yeah, well, it does make a difference because it's a right to farm
Well,
issue.
Well, then,
No.
so I can go in front of them and get a,
Unfortunately,
then I can get a
okay,
variance.
I'm done with this argument.
Okay, Mrs. McCabe, real quickly, you made a good point, and I saw the letter about the complaint about the lights. They are being addressed. I mean, you already coming here has made a big difference on how this application's going forward, because we are doing exactly what you, if they're bothering you, we're doing something about it.
I just care about this town. It seems like most people are letting it go by the wayside, and it's frustrating as
Well, we're
a person who
not.
lives here.
We're all residents here. We are just as concerned about what you're stating as anybody, but we are here on a case that we're getting the facts, and we are going to
And say,
weigh the positive and the negative.
and say
that's-
this passes. Who actually, after that date they get their approval, who actually checks to make sure that they only have 24 kids there?
Code enforcement.
Code enforcement.
Code enforcement and the Department of Education.
So if I
You could
call
put
them,
in,
they're
you
gonna
could put,
come.
if you feel that they are somehow violating all the stipulations that they have agreed to tonight, after everything's said and done, you could always call code enforcement and we will go out.
And what can code enforcement do to stop it at that point? Nothing, right? Just
No,
like-
They'll
violations
cease.
and
They'll
summonses.
close them.
Violations and
It's
summonses.
also a Department of Education violation, so code enforcement would have to come out. If they're out of violation, they have to report it. It also goes to the Department of Education.
And they're going to have to be shut down before they come back, or they have to correct it. So it's not,
Well, I could tell you,
Yeah.
I originally wanted to come here on your first 2 meetings. I had thousands of people that were going to come to with me. It got moved 3 times, and I didn't have time. That was my fault. I was busy
Okay.
doing other things. And it's just, this isn't just impact me. There's other people that it's going to impact that aren't here tonight, and it's just frustrating that people who can't make it, they're not going to have a say in this, and your guys' decision is going to forever change the landscape of our road, forever. And that's all I really have to say.
okay.
Has this been on our agenda before? I'm sorry.
It's not
Yes.
carried out.
We got carried. Yeah, so we have not heard any testimony, so.
Never heard testimony.
The last time it was scheduled,
it
we
was
were behind the
scheduled.
cemetery, and we knew we weren't gonna get reached, so we carried it. I don't remember the prior times, but that was the one time we carried it, that I'm.
But it's carried on the record, so it's announced to the public.
I just wanted to make sure that.
Okay, anybody else from public?
Good evening, my name is Sherry Rivas. I live at 3 Hearth Court in Howell.
Ms. Rivas,
Yes,
do you swear the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. 3 Hearth Court.
And spell your
Where is
last.
that in relation to? I'm sorry.
I'm just a Howell
Wait, wait,
resident.
wait, wait. Okay,
Rivas, R-I-V-A-S.
Reavis.
Thank you.
and how far do you live from this property?
I don't know the number of miles, but I live on the west side of Route 9.
Okay, good.
I saw the Oprah records with emails related to this application. The emails are between Robert Nicastro, a township official, and Shira Lieberman, who's associated with this application. We heard from her earlier. I'm not here to oppose the application. I'm merely a concerned resident who seeks to have a better understanding of what role Robert Nicastro had in this application. So I wanted to ask some questions to Ms. Lieberman, if that's possible.
I'm going to object because it has nothing to do with the application, Mr. Chair or Mr. Mayor. We're here to deal with a zoning question. I'm not sure what that has to do with anything. And he's not an elected official.
I know he's not an elected official, but he was in contact with the town regarding this application, so I just have a couple questions.
Well, I'm going to object. I don't think it's relevant to the application.
I mean,
Andy?
Yeah, I only think land use questions are relevant. I mean, I don't know what the questions could be, but it doesn't,
Well,
I don't think, I think they're objection, that would be objection.
You would take no exception as far as,
Is she allowed to make her statement?
Yeah, of course, yeah, she can make a statement, but you wanted to ask the
yeah,
applicant.
yeah, okay. That's
I was
what-
only
okay.
referring to
Okay.
asking, you could say whatever she would come up with.
Okay.
So my question was if Task Force Advisor LLC was a consultant for this application, if Robert Nicastro was hired in any capacity regarding this application, and if yes or no, why Robert Nicastro would be emailing the Director of Community Development and the Deputy Township Manager regarding this application. And then I wanted to ask you, sir, have you ever represented Robert Nicastro in your professional capacity as an attorney? And has Robert Nicastro ever recused himself from any application before the Planning or Zoning Board when you represented him as an applicant?
And again, none of those questions are relevant. You made your statement, and we're not responding unless we're directed to. Because none of them have anything to do with this application and the proofs that are necessary to support a variance application, which is all we're here for.
Okay. Well, it was in relationship to the application, so I believe that it was appropriate to ask the question.
Well, the individual referenced hasn't given any testimony before the board, so I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That-
Okay, thank you.
I find it offensive that that suggestion would come out. I know who that is. I know absolutely nothing about any contact that he would have had other than the testimony that we provided tonight. That's pretty offensive that you would suggest that we would be influenced by somebody who's not here.
I'm sorry, I didn't
Yeah.
say that you were influenced by anybody that's not here.
That was your inference.
All right, well, you misunderstood my statement then, and through an Oprah request, there's emails from Robert Nicastro to Matt Howard regarding this application. So I wanted to know whether or not, what part he was
Do you
playing.
want to read those into the record? I mean, is that?
I think the question's more relevant to Mr. Nicastro than anybody.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
okay. Thank you. Anybody else?
Good evening. Betty Velez Gimbel, 97 Victory Road.
Ms. Les
Oh,
Gimbel,
sorry.
do you swear testimony you give will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Witness is sworn.
Good evening. As a strong advocate of the agricultural community, as a representative of Howell Farmers United, I would be remiss if I did not applaud the vision of tonight's agricultural goal in providing this type of education for these very students who are in need. So I applaud your efforts. I did have concerns about the lighting, more of on an environmental aspect, and I did share that with the applicant, the importance of the environmental sensitivity of where this particular facility is, and the nocturnal animals that do live in the area, and she was very receptive to that, so I was appreciative of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Betty.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
All right.
Seeing none, do I have
Motion
a
to
motion?
close to the public?
Everybody in favor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Jen, what Mr. McKay was talking about with all this extracurricular activity that may or may not be happening at this farm, I just wanted some clarity. The applicant owns the property, correct?
Correct.
So now they own the farm.
Correct.
So as a condition of approval, if we were to approve, getting back to, because I was leading to that whole thing with the fire pits, will it be a condition of approval that the operational period will be the only time the farm will be in use?
So, no,
No.
because it's an actual farm.
This-
So,
okay, this is
the
what-
school portion of it, which is what the testimony has been provided to you, is at the latest it will be at 6:30 PM. That's the after-school activity, but make no mistake about it, it's still a farm. So an animal could get sick, or something could happen, something has to happen on the farm,
that's regulated under right to farm, that regardless of what you guys do today, could happen regardless, because it is an active farm.
No, but I'm saying as far as renting it out,
So they're not renting it, they're running it. They've given us all the parameters, so Andy has taken down all of the parameters, the number of students, the hours, the type of activities, what's happening. And so any action that you take with respect to the adding of the educational component of the 24 students to the site.
And the after-school.
And the after-school, correct. But make no mistake about it, it's a farm. It can operate 24 hours a day as a farm, and there's nothing we can do about it, because it's regulated under right to farm. So they're here for approval to add a use, which we've heard the testimony with all the parameters, and they're going to be limited to those parameters. But the farm still can operate as a farm, regardless. They could get out and plow the fields at 5 o'clock in the morning if they want to. That's their right under right to farm.
okay.
All right, so I have a question then. So even though, I get I get the school separation and delineation from the farm. So is there any staff that will be available or would have the ability, if they needed to stay on the farm, meaning like one person, in case there was an issue with an animal? I know there's cameras and things like that, but is there going to be somebody that's dedicated to care and anything else with the farm?
I do think the testimony, and as she walks up, I do think the testimony was that there's nobody there overnight.
Correct, but there are people.
But there are
Be
farm
somebody.
staff
Yeah.
dedicated to, they also help, correct, with the students, but they're there also for the animals, correct? You said there's 4
Yeah.
employees?
Yeah.
Yes, and they're available when needed after hours.
Okay.
The animals are really well taken care of.
Awesome, okay. Thank you.
Sal, do you want to?
Very, very briefly sum up. Inherently beneficial use, which means we've addressed the positive criteria, at least as it relates to the D variance. This minimal site impact, minimal site improvements are proposed. What you see on that aerial is essentially what you'll always see before or after if this were approved. It's a very isolated property. It's buffered, not on our property, but surrounding properties are all wooded. There's commercial use across the street. We're not building any new structures. There's minimal traffic, as you heard testimony. We're going to fix the lighting issue. We're going to comply with the lighting ordinance. We're going to lower the heights of the poles that were provided higher than necessary. We agreed to put the rear lights behind the barn on timers and minimize the light intensity on those lights. We believe we've addressed the negative criteria as a result of those conditions. We've agreed to address all of the technical comments contained within the board's the board's professionals' reports. And again, when you look at it, it's still a farm site with a small school, very low intensity, and a tremendous use to the benefit to the community to treat these special needs children. And for those reasons, we've requested the board grant the approvals with the conditions that we've stipulated.
Okay, and your professionals will work with ours to their
Yes,
approval?
on
Okay.
all of their comments made tonight and in the reports.
Okay. Okay, what is the pleasure of the board?
Just, did we resolve how the sign was being addressed? I didn't recall it in my
The
notes.
sign?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the existing sign, but we're moving it to comply with the location, but we want to keep the same size. But we're going to move it
Keeping the sign, but we're resetting it
back.
because of the highway,
It's a requirement.
the setback.
Setback
It's required
requirement,
setback.
correct.
Yeah, and they're on a county road, and the county requires dedication, so they're moving everything so it's outside of the right-of-way dedication and to comply with our setback requirements.
Okay, anything else? I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the conditional use variance, bulk variance, and preliminary and final major site plan requested by the Center for Education in New Jersey. And I'd like to state that we here in Howell, like our farms, we try to do everything to the benefit of our farmers. And I can't think of a better use of a farm than to help train special need children on how to operate a farm and, use our farm for these special children. And thank you for providing the T. Connor alum that you're sharing.
Okay, do I have a second? Second by Jose. Roll call.
Mr. Barillo?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
I just want to add on, just again, I know we've mentioned it a few times, but the work, real diligently about the paved area and the lights. I mean, I just want to reiterate that, and I'll say yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
And Chairman Mertens?
Based on the finding of facts, because I do think the positives outweigh the negatives, I am going to also say yes.
Thank you
Application
very
is approved.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Good luck. Okay, thank you for doing that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Please come this way, need it.
We will.
Have a good night.
Have a good evening.
I want to get this in. Yeah, I know you get. Okay, despite the time, I would like to move on to the next application. So if anybody doesn't need a break, I would like to move ahead.
Forge ahead.
Need a break? You guys?
No, we're good. Rock and roll.
I'm the right man.
Mr. Galvin,
Yes, sir.
how you doing tonight?
Good.
Sorry you had to wait, but,
No,
it was...
I understand this business. I've been doing it for 35 years, and your patience is appreciated.
Rich, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, you just need to announce the,
Okay.
announce the
Thank you, I'm
application.
just all...
Yeah, well, we've had a long night already.
Okay, into record, case number BA 24-14, Ronald and Susan Springer, the herbery at Bear Creek Farm. It's a use variance, bulk variance, preliminary final site plan. Application to Ronald and Susan Springer as applicants and owners seeking use variance, bulk variances, and preliminary and final major site plan. Approval to continue to use an existing building on the farm to host events. No new development is proposed, and no food preparation is proposed on-site. Catering will be provided by outside parties, and portable restrooms will be utilized. The application indicates events will not exceed 120 people, and the application proposes other site improvements on Block 51, Lot 54, 494 Lakewood Farmingdale Road. Now, Mr. Galvin, everything's on record. Thank you, Andy.
I'm Dennis Galvin. I'm with the firm of Davison, Eastman, Munoz, and Payon. I'm here tonight representing the Springers who own the herbery. As this board is well acquainted with, you have farms in Howell. That's a good thing. We want to hold on to those farms. But farms on their own are struggling. So we have to find ways that we can bring them in a little bit more revenue and keep them alive. All right, owing to the time that you've already put in, you don't need to hear a lot from me. I will interject where I think you need extra information. I'll get you whatever you need. But my client would like to give you a brief statement. So I'd like to put him under oath, and then I'd like him to give you that two-page statement.
Do you have any professionals, Mr. Galvin?
Yes, we have 3 professionals.
You want to swear?
Okay, let's swear him in,
I think
and then
the
we'll do
board
the
prefers that.
qualifications from there.
Scott Kennel for our transportation if we need him. And again, the well-recognized Christine Cafone.
Subbing in for Ally Coffin and Jim Higgins tonight on this one.
Deep, raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, state your name for the record, starting with the applicant.
Ron Springer.
Okay.
John Pluskanka, Concept Engineering.
Christine Cafone, Cafone Consulting Group.
Scott Kennel, McDonough and Ray Associates.
Okay,
All right.
We're ready to go.
let's proceed.
You can sit.
I can sit, okay.
You can sit on either one. Those triangular shaped things are microphones.
Okay, thanks. He was ready to go, so.
You could sit as well, Dennis.
Well, I haven't been able to sit since second grade.
First, thank you very much for hearing us tonight. My name is Ron Springer. I'm 75 years old, and 25 years ago I purchased an abandoned chicken farm in total disrepair. On the property was a small 2-bedroom home and a very large chicken coop that had to be demolished. The site had been used as a dump, and we moved hundreds of old tires and piles of mixed garbage scattered all over the site. We built the barn and greenhouse, and the dream was to create a beautiful farm where the community could come buy our plants, feed our goats and chickens, and enjoy an outdoor experience. Despite all we invested and all of our hard work, it became apparent that the economics of the farm were not sustainable. One of our patrons asked if they could have a family celebration on the farm, and we were able to host several successful events. It became clear that this might be a revenue source that would allow us to keep the farm solvent. This evening is a culmination of years of seeking a way to gain approval from the township that would allow us to continue our life on the farm that we love. We do love this farm, and we feel it's a wonderful asset to the community, and we really hope that you guys can help us save it. Thank you very much.
Before you go,
Yes.
so Dennis, you had said that you're maximizing the number of potential people to 125, is that what you said?
The wise thing to say is there's a, a garden, it's a greenhouse.
Yeah.
We have a greenhouse, and in the greenhouse, we can see, is it 50 or 60?
50 on the greenhouse.
We can fit 50 people. Well, I think most of our functions are going to be, in that greenhouse, going to be 50 people. But if we put a tent outside in really nice weather, we can double that capacity and go to 120.
Okay.
And when we were in discussions with the professionals, they said, hey, what do you think the most you would have out there? And 120 is the most. And we talked about this. You agree, those kind of events will happen on a Saturday or Sunday, right? For the most part?
Almost always, yeah, I would say so, yes.
All right, so we're only talking about one of those events on a Saturday and one of those events on a Sunday. And again, that would be, outdoors would have to be that kind of time of the
Nice
year,
weather.
that would work. But
I just wanted to make sure that you weren't handcuffing yourself with the 120 number, and that if you needed to be 200 or what have you, I would hate for you to limit yourself, and then when you get wildly successful, have to come back.
if we get wildly successful, we'll come back.
Okay.
But the reality is, I believe, I've listened to them long enough over the last few months, I'm confident that they're not going over that 120.
Okay.
And it won't be, we don't serve anybody. We're going to provide the building. People are going to come in and use the building. So we're not creating any food, right? You don't do any service.
Right, well, the number has a lot to do with the parking. We only have enough parking for so many cars, and we don't want to exceed that, so
Understand.
it's comfortable for the number of cars we can accommodate.
I understand. I just wanted to make sure you weren't kind of
No,
hamstringing yourself.
I am grateful. I gave it a lot of thought.
Okay, perfect.
If that's all we needed more, we would be asking for more. We would design more parking. This is what they can operate and what they feel is enough to help them make the farm more functional. And it's still going to operate as a farm, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, and they have other things that they do there through the course of the year. You've got some pre-prepared food, and you sell plants.
Well, we sell plants, and we grow plants, and grow flowers, cutting flowers, red twig dogwoods.
And a gift store too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
wife loves that.
The barn-
She's a
yeah,
frequent.
Yes, the barn is more of a gift store that hopefully most of the things in there kind of relate to the garden. But
And you heard it in the last case. When you have a farm, there are certain things you can do under the Right to Farm Act. And what we're trying to do is by trying to give these farms extra revenue, we have to make them zoning compliant. And once we try to make them zoning compliant, we have to work. There's work that has to be done. We've done our work, and we're here to present it.
Okay.
That's accurate.
Good? Okay. Mr. Piskanka.
Here.
Do you need me anymore up front?
You go sit and relax. And
Okay.
come back. We'll come back.
Okay, the only question for qualification for me, unless anybody else, you're
Licensed professional engineer for the last 50 years.
Yeah, and it's current.
still current.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
You're welcome. Just very briefly, the property is on County Route 547, Lakewood Farmingdale Road. It's in the AR6 zone. It contains the farm use, a residential dwelling where the Springers live at, a wood frame building, greenhouses, a shed, and a stone parking lot. So the parking lot's about 44 spaces between the front and the back. Most of the parking's in the back. It's existing. Everything here is existing. We're not adding new buildings. We're not adding new pavement, except for maybe a handicap spot. And we're trying to keep everything as it is. So there's no issue with drainage, stormwater management. And we did go to DEP a year or so ago and got the LOI and the FHA. So those have been determined ahead of time. And we made an application for preliminary and final site plan. We have the Freehold soil approval for an exemption because we're not disturbing more than 5,000 square feet. And we do have a traffic engineer who will speak towards the traffic. A traffic impact analysis was given to the board, and as Ron mentioned, the greenhouse is used for the events. Most of the events are small events. These are baby birthday parties, showers, bridal things. So most of them would probably be less than 50 people, and they did have several events that did occur here in the past for a short time. And then they stopped those events at the time of COVID, et cetera, and now they're back after a couple of years trying to get a approval. So the 120 people is a good number with the parking we have with 44 spaces. Again, there's no food preparation, and the beauty and uniqueness of the site. If you've been there, it's a really beautiful farm. Visitors have been asking them for years to do small events, and that's what they want to do here to save the farm. Keep in mind that the events happen in usually spring, summer, and fall. In summertime, it's too hot in the greenhouse, so they use the tent next to the greenhouse for events. Spring and fall, they can use both of them when the weather is appropriate. They think there might be several weddings a year, but this is not the major thing. That's just for the worst-case scenario, the 120 people. We did have Shari Spiro go to the site, meet with the Springers, and discuss the Four Seasons buffer, and what she asked them to do between their existing home and the house next door. They're going to comply with her recommendations for buffering to make that work. There is a number of variances required, which will be handled by Christine Cafone, and there are waivers for curbing for the parking areas. We're going to put in bumper blocks, and we've been back to the county of Monmouth, and we've done some extra work in front, which the board hasn't seen, except for the one plan we did, which was a circulation plan. That circulation plan was given to the fire department official who approved the plan that we have, and we're going to narrow in the entranceway a little bit so it's easier to get in and out.
Can I go back to the parking lot? I know Charlie's itching to go, but I just have one comment before you go. Personally, I prefer no bumper blocks because I feel like if you have an event and you had staff parking the vehicles, they would park closer to one another than the bumper blocks. Plus, they're also a pain in the neck for the farm use to use that area to get equipment around. So I would just recommend that when you have those larger events, like the 120-person events, that could you commit to having staff help like guide people to park so that, not a valet, but more like directed parking, because I feel like you could probably get more cars in that area. I understand it's shown on the plan
like for illustrative purposes, but I feel like you probably could get more than those spaces. So if you have someone that works on the farm that could help.
How about cones too, Jen? I mean,
Cones would be great too.
Yeah,
I just feel
cones.
like the bumper blocks are a recipe for problems out there.
I totally agree. I think the cones would be sufficient.
We do have staff that does park the cars, help traffic come in and out, and that's a great idea, and we will comply.
I mean,
along with the
obviously,
bumper
it's
block.
up to the board, but I would recommend not having the bumper blocks. I feel like it's going to be an impediment to you operating the farm itself.
Whatever it is, get us bumper blocks.
I know, you want them. I know you desperately want them.
I can't thank you enough for that observation, because we have to figure out how to get our trucks through there.
That's what I'm saying. So
during the
I
week.
feel like you can manage it in that,
We were just doing it because we
yes.
thought we needed to, but we can park the cars with people too.
I would recommend against it.
I would just say, I don't take any exception to it either. Usually when we require that, it's on large sites. When you have these gravel areas, you want to kind of put some kind of barrier so it doesn't keep creeping and creeping. This site's pretty developed, there's a lot of woods around it. The property, although it seems large in area, a lot of it is encumbered by some environmentally restricted areas, so I have no issue for it. And then Dennis, do you mind if I just jump in and ask John a bunch of pointed questions? Okay, all right, so, you said there's no site improvements proposed, everything's existing. So anytime we get an application, we look back as historically just to see what's happened. So, there has been some gravel added over the years for parking. But looking at the aerials, right, this has been an active farm since like the early 2000s, right, Mr. Poskanka?
Correct.
And then the greenhouse areas where parking is now present, those areas had gravel base and then also had a canvas structure over top of them for large parts of the year for the greenhouses, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, so we're changing impervious for impervious essentially. When you look at the new parking as a whole, it's under what would be a major development, quarter acre of new impervious. So I have no issue from that needing any trigger for stormwater management. So I wanted to get that on the record. As far as the surfacing, the parking itself where a lot of your movements are going to occur are further back into the site. A lot of times when we have concerns about the gravel, it's up at the front where you could have a lot of tracking onto the road. Everything, parking and the K-turns and getting out of the site, that's all back in there, so I don't have an issue with the gravel surfacing. It's acted as a farm use for a number of years with this surfacing, so I don't have an issue with it. As far as the disturbance, I'll let in the buffer area along the west side, because there is a residence next door. I'll let Sherry and Jen opine to that. The east side of the property is a little unique. There's I think it's the Bannon Meadow Brook that's on, Bear Swamp Brook that's on the right side of the property. There's also some wetlands. You heard Ms. Poskanka say they got flood hazard area verification. They got their LOI. That documents that everything's existing condition. That's been part of the farm use. It's continuing to be used as part of the farm use. It's been there for a long period of time, correct?
Correct.
Nothing's changing there, okay. All right, I'm gonna keep going and try to speed through the rest of this. As far as the Fire Bureau, they issued a memo recently saying they have no comment. I'm happy to hear that they met and shared a circulation plan. The only concern that I had was when you come in through past like the farm stand parking, there is a little bit of a choke point that's like 18 feet or something. That could just be widened to 20 feet just so we can get two cars passing. There's no issue with maybe putting a little bit more gravel, making it a little bit wider there?
We agree.
Okay. As far as anything along the property frontage, that's the county's right of way, that's their jurisdiction. We don't have any say in what does or does not happen there. They do need technical relief from putting sidewalk along the frontage because that is our ordinance requirement. They can seek a waiver to pay into the fund, and then, of course, we can't waive the fee. They'd have to go to the governing body for that.
And they have
Okay.
gone to the governing body.
Okay, so let's put that on the record. They're not putting the sidewalk, they're getting the waiver, then they can go to the governing body. As far as, let's see, anything else that I have on here? I'm just trying to go through my letter again. Operational hours, what are the typical hours of events when you have them?
Well, let me just say this. We think that most events won't go beyond 8 p.m. at night, and we need another hour in cleanup, so we won't be going after 9 o'clock. That's what we, are you, we're being, was
I'm
it
just
10,
saying,
11?
like a wedding would go probably later.
Again, I just don't want you to handcuff yourself.
We will be guided by what the board thinks.
I mean, I think in most instances where we've had, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong here, where we've had
other farms come in for events. I think we said no later than 11, but no outside, like, music or any kind of stuff after 10. So-
Because that's the change in the noise ordinance.
Correct, so as long as everything is inside, I think 11 is a reasonable hour.
We'd be happy with that.
Okay, then we're good with it then.
What time, Jen?
11.
11?
No outside, like, noise, music, whatever, after 10.
And so as far as the parking area, with existing lighting, is there existing lighting? Have you had an issue? I mean, you've been operating there for some years now, right? Has there been any issues with lack of lighting?
There's just some lighting in the back for security, but there've been no issues when they operated a couple of years ago.
And when there's events, you have someone from the facility help coordinate the ingress and egress to kind of facilitate that?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. As far as, they're technically a preliminary and major site plan because of the adding of the parking over the years. I just want to put on the record, they are adding parking spaces. It appears to be under the 25 space threshold that would trigger like compliance to have to put in EV parking spaces. If you look at the history of the property, they've been parking farm vehicles in a lot of these gravel areas. It might be somewhat informalized, but net, it's less than 25 parking spaces up. Want to put that on the record. And then bathrooms. So when there's events, you guys have portable bathrooms that get brought
We'll
onto the
have
site?
portable bathrooms come in for an event, correct.
Okay, so there is a force main available along the public way here. I will say it's my understanding with other township projects over at Soldier Memorial that MRSA is not letting people connect into that. So I take no issue with them having portable bathrooms because they do not have the ability to connect into the public sewer. And then as far as the parking, so you heard 120 parking spaces.
No.
120 people. There's, I want to say 44 formalized parking spaces in the rear, and there's another 4 in the front by I'll call it the farm stand part of it. Anytime we see a kind of use like this, there's no definition or ordinance for our parking requirement for wedding facilities or banquet facilities. What we've used in the past historically has been, houses of worship and things like that, because that's when you might have a wedding and then a reception thereafter. That requirement is 1 per 3 spaces, so for 120 people coming to the site, 40 parking spaces would be required. They have at least 44 in the back and then some additional in the front. And then as far as we talked about the county right-of-way stuff, that's really all I have. I'll let Jen ask any questions regarding to the buffer and then operational from a use if there's anything else that needs to be asked. But I think that's all I have from a site plan perspective.
Anybody from the board?
I'm good.
We did ask for we have refuse containers way in the back by the parking lot. We asked not to do the enclosures, again, trying to save money to save this farm.
That's it?
Other than that, that's it.
I'm not really a big fan of that.
No?
I think it should be put in an enclosure. If there's no enclosure, then those things tend to migrate across sites, and it could become problematic from a parking point of view. So, I would say, even though you guys know that I'm a big advocate of the masonry enclosure, I'm not looking to break the bank here. I think if you did a nice board-on-board enclosure with like a gate in the corner so it could roll out when they come to take it out and roll it back in, I think that's a good compromise to not break the bank for the farm use, but also create an enclosure
We
that...
agree, we agree.
Perfect.
We're going to move on to my next witness.
Yeah.
You okay?
Yeah.
Don't go far. Here's Scott. Mr. Kenner, let's keep this, don't get comfortable.
I won't.
So, do you have an opinion about the parking on this site?
Yes, I mean, Charlie kind of stole my thunder, but yes.
Real quick, qualifications, just so
Sure.
it's on record.
Scott Kennel, Kennel with McDonough and Ray Associates, located at 1431 Lakewood Road, Manasquan.
I have over 40 years of traffic transportation planning and have appeared before this
You're
board.
current with everything, right?
I'm qualified as a traffic expert.
Okay.
I'm not a licensed engineer. I qualify as a traffic expert.
Okay. We accept your qualifications.
And as it relates to the parking, as Charlie indicated, that the industry standard is 1 per 3. We have 40, and that generally includes also employees or staff that you would have, and that when you come up with that factor of 1 space per 3 guests. So we have in excess of 40 spaces, more than adequate. The other thing I'll state too is that those larger events will occur on a Saturday where the traffic volumes are approximately 30% less than you have commuter periods. So that's, we've provided analysis showing the driveways can function well within acceptable levels of service. And the other thing, last thing I'll say is the county request to create a kind of a more conforming driveway is a significant improvement in my opinion. Right now, it's basically a 60-foot wide uncontrolled access. We're going to create with curb returns a more traditional driveway design, which I think will be an improvement to the site.
But you guys have questions of the traffic expert?
Charlie?
No, I mean, I'll just go back to Jen's point is, I don't think we're trying to hamstring any applicant or anything like that. Like, the parking on site certainly works. If there was any intent at any point in time to use like some shared parking off-site or anything like that, like now would be the time to bring it up and present it to the board if you wanted to go above 120 employees. We just hate to see people have to come back when it could have been included as part of the application.
Understood. I think their sweet spot here is smaller events, 40 to 50 people.
Okay, board members? Excuse me, Jennifer? Didn't think so. Board members?
I have a quick
Yeah.
question. Does the staff help guide people from the street into the parking lot when you have events? It is a 2-lane highway, so we're one.
Yes. Back your microphone, sorry.
We generally
I think
have
there's
a
somebody in
person
the audience that does that.
out by the entrance of the, where they come in the driveway, there's somebody with a flashlight and an orange vest there, and then they direct them back to the back where there are other people there to show them where to park. So-
Off the street, though?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because it is, there's no stop sign there. They're just coming straight down the street. So-
There's no stop sign there.
Yeah.
No.
Thank you.
It's not that far past the light, though,
Correct.
right? Like the light at
maybe
like Herbertsville, Old Town Road is not that far.
Maybe 800, 900,
That's
maybe
what I'm saying.
1,000
It's not
feet.
that
Yeah,
far.
the picture's showing it.
Yeah.
It would take me a minute or two to ride that on my bike.
So if there's no more questions,
We'll go to Christine.
go to
Capone.
Christine.
Thank you.
Close it up. You got any energy
Tapping
left?
in, tapping in.
Hi.
Oh, I already swear.
Yes,
We're
you're all-
ready,
Christine.
You're ready to go.
I'm laughing because you had piles of books for the last case, and here you've got 3
I'll have to put the
papers.
Jim Higgins, because Jim Higgins did all the work on this. I'm just here subbing for him tonight. He gave me all the words to say. Good evening. I'm qualified, I assume, still as a licensed professional planner. My licenses are current and valid. So this is an application, again, in your ARE6 zone to keep one of your farms in town sustainable, which is a good thing because in 2022, again, the land use plan element of your master plan recommended that banquet facilities as permitted conditional uses for farms with Q farm assessment. And right, why was that recommendation in the master plan? Your planner who wrote it is here, but I would imagine it was in all likelihood to make our farms sustainable, consistent with the ARE6 vision, which is to preserve the rural character. So obviously, the commercial venue is not a permitted use in the ARE6. That's why we're here for the D1. So the board does have to find that the use is particularly suited, right? Unlike an inherently beneficial use, where we don't have that burden, here for a non-inherently beneficial use, we have to find that there's something about this site that is particularly suitable for the proposed use. I think the size of the site at 14 and a half acres, together with the existing layout, right? You heard Mr. Cunliffe, your engineer, just testify and speak about the layout, how the K-turns and the majority of the parking, the lion's share, will occur in the back of the site. So the site is actually quite well laid out to host small venues. So I think that the site is certainly particularly suitable to host commercial venues. As far as the positive criteria, Statutorily, you have to find one or more purposes of the land use law would be advanced by the grant of this application. There have been 6 identified in the report, the letter report that was prepared by Mr. Higgins. I don't know if that was shared with you, but I can certainly testify that criteria A, promoting the general welfare, preserving a farm consistent with your master plan. Criteria C, providing adequate light air and open space. While we don't have the required buffers, we certainly are a farm, and the buffers are intended to preserve farms. So we are not adding any additional buildings on site. So we'll certainly continue to maintain adequate light, air, and open space. Another criteria is D, which is to ensure that development of individual municipalities does not conflict with the development of the state, and certainly allowing farming uses to continue will promote the purposes of the county and state with regard to promoting farms and agricultural type uses. Criteria F talks about encouraging the appropriate and efficient expenditure of public funds by the coordination of public development with land use policies. So here you have the ability to allow a farm to continue and preserve it without having for any, to preserve its use, but not that you're preserving the farm, but you're preserving the use of the farm by allowing for the continued commercial viability without expending any public funds. So that's good. And then criteria G, which talks about providing sufficient space in appropriate locations. Again, criteria J also, which talks about promoting the conservation of historic sites, districts, and open spaces to prevent urban sprawl and degradation of the environment through improper use of land. So again, statutorily, if you find one, we meet our burden of proof with respect to the positive criteria. I just cited 6 of them for you. So I think that certainly we meet our burden of proof with respect to the positive criteria. And then when you look at the negative criteria, it does not ask you to hold this or any other applicant to a standard that there be no detriment, but just the benefits of the grant of the variance outweigh any detriment. And here the preservation of the farm, certainly the preservation of the farm use certainly outweigh any of the detriment, and particularly that we are consistent with the vision for the ARE6 zone, which is to preserve rural uses. So I do think that this applicant meets its burden of proof. The other thing I'll say with the negative criteria and the impact on the public good is the applicant has been hosting these type of events here with no incident to the public or negative incident. So I see no reason why that wouldn't continue to be able to operate here in such a manner if the board were to move favorably on the variance. So I have nothing further on direct. I think we meet our statutory burden of proof for the grant of the D1 use and all of the bulks which would be subsumed into this. When you're dealing with a D1 use, to introduce a use, any of the bulk criteria that you violate would be subsumed into the D use.
I have nothing to add to that. I just want to say that I want to spend a couple minutes talking about the buffer relief, which I don't disagree gets subsumed, but unlike other applicants, Shari has been working with the applicant's team to come up with what we think is a more reasonable requirement, right?
Up by their home, there's another, their neighbors next to them have a house, and so that's like a typical residential property over there. And you could see right there to the right of the, what was that, a patio? The patio space there, no, on his property. You see the 4 white umbrellas, I guess they are?
Wait, but
Yes.
Yes.
tell
Over.
us what to do and we're going to do it.
Yeah, so in this area, over to the right a little more, there's, they have an evergreen buffer there. It's just that section, the trees don't have any lower limbs, so that's where it would be, a reasonable spot to add additional plant material like shrubs, just to fill that space in. But he has a really nice buffer going down the side of the property there.
And when you get towards the back, the buffer is even more dense.
Right, it becomes really a regular woods.
So like that would be, in order for them to comply with our buffer requirement, they'd have to take out mature trees to
Yeah,
plant.
it's not worth disturbing that area.
I would recommend leaving it. So technically, the application requires relief from our buffer requirements, but I think Shari has looked at all the trees and would agree that the back of the property is already heavily wooded. It would make no sense to replace that. And then just the supplementing it, I would just ask that, John's office work with Shari and wherever it's needed to supplement in some understory along that coincident property line, I think that would meet the intent of the buffer separation. So I would take no exception to the relief from the buffer. And I know I never say that, so you might want to.
Yeah, no.
Twice in one night,
Stay
right.
down, because I never say that, but.
That's why we have a recording
I
secretary.
know,
just for-
I want to be, so yes, there's a record of it, but I think that that's a reasonable compromise.
Ms. Beam, just a question to that. Do we know if the neighbor has expressed any concern or any opinion on that?
They were noticed with the application, so if
Okay.
they come up during public, that would be the time.
Okay.
So, and Mr. Chair, I just want to make two comments. So, I would just say if the applicant has any intent in the future to want to pave the gravel parking lot, I would say we captured as part of his approval that like they wouldn't have to come back for site plan. It's impervious, you know, it'd be changing light to light. It's not at a major development or anything like that, just to get as part of it. If they ever have a desire in the future, I just want to put that on the record. And then if public sewer does become available and they have a desire to connect, as long as they're operating within the maximum number of people for the events and everything like that, I don't think they should have to come back to the board for a quote-unquote expansion of the use. I just want to put that on the record so they're protected in the future if they want to do these things in the future.
So I don't think you want to put a paved parking lot in the back, right?
I'm not saying they
Yeah.
have to.
No, no,
If
but
they
I-
want to ever at any point in the future,
Yeah, if they
don't
want
have
to,
come
I
back
agree.
we'll
They-
do that.
We've given careful consideration to what we're putting in front of you. If it's a, you know, a great success and if it gets a lot bigger, I don't know. You know,
Yeah.
you know, it's certainly not the plan. It's not a bait and switch. This is, what we're offering you is what we intended.
That's not at all.
You guys
what
have
I'm
been
saying
great.
is I'm just saying, if you want to, if they want to pave it at some point in the future, I don't want to have them come back to the board for
And
the
we-
sake of it.
And we say, Charlie's awesome, we agree. That's on the record. Pave the existing parking lot. If they want to, okay.
Okay. Thanks, Charlie, that's a good
The
thing to
only
add.
thing that I feel bad about is I know that there's a really terrific picture of the building inside with all the tables and chairs, and I don't know where it is in the pile of pictures. It's been provided. It would have been a picture that we sent in that showed the
greenhouse.
greenhouse with,
I mean, maybe while we're looking for it, we can.
it's not important,
Yeah.
it's not, really wasn't important, it just,
There it is.
there you go. I thought it was very, very nice and attractive and a good use of that farm facility.
Mr. Gavin, and with that, I would just like to express and hopefully have you acknowledge that because of the change of use, farms do get some kind of an exemption with regards to greenhouses and how they're set up. You're going to be changing the use by putting people inside here, and there's been a recent change in UCC code with regards to tents or open-air structures, with regards to tying down and having proper wind and load on them. So your clients will have to apply to the building department to ensure that tents or the greenhouse meet those new requirements in the UCC. Nope.
We don't have a choice, okay? And we're trying to cooperate in every way possible.
I just don't want them to get caught off guard that it's
When
going
they
to be a
find out that
requirement.
They have to tie down the tent.
Tie down or
All
make
right.
some kind of other modifications.
I'll do
safety
my
is
best to
important.
explain it afterwards.
Okay, at this time, unless anybody has a question from the board, I'm going to open it up to public.
Make a motion, sir.
Do I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
The meeting has now been open to the public. If you'd like to come up, state your name and your home address.
Good evening. My name's Daniel Smith. I live at 500 Lakewood Farmingdale Road.
Mr. Smith, do you swear the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing
I
but the
do.
truth, so help you God?
I don't have any complaint. We've lived there several years now. We're neighbors. I've heard talk of buffers and stuff. I don't understand really the need for it, because if anybody had a problem, it would be us. We're next door. Through,
You don't need the landscaping supplemented between your property?
I don't feel that, no. I mean, I have a neighbor between us and our yard is there. We're the next house over.
So you're
not
immediately to
the south of the property?
We live south of the property.
But not immediately south.
No, do you have the picture up again? Can we have the,
You're one house away.
what we have, the Shin residence directly next to them. We live next to Ralph Shin.
Right.
We've never had an incident. We actually miss having the open air parties and so on. We get a free concert out of it. We sit back, get your glass of wine, sit on the deck and enjoy the music. There's never been a problem. We did have one incident several years ago. Susie's Chickens came over to do a meet and greet with mine. And she taught me a very valuable thing, that if you want to get them back, Cheerios. So we have no complaint. They've been fine neighbors, and we want to see them succeed. So if that's any help.
Thank you so much. Anybody else? Andy, she doesn't have to be sworn in again, right?
No.
Different application.
Different
Yeah.
applications, you guys?
I would just.
Betty Velez Gimbel, 97 Victory
Swear the
Road.
testimony you give will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. Just wanted to make a comment and thank all of you. I do see that the vibe is very different in here, and I really appreciate the support for the farm. It is a beautiful farm, and I know that you've been there, and these are great owners, great people that are definitely going to comply. And just the ability to have the events to supplement the farming income is definitely something that will help to be sustainable. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty.
Good evening, Mark Parisi, 2 Castle Court.
Mr. Parisi, you swear the testimony you give will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to stick around till 10 o'clock. I'm going to say something. Chairman Mertens has a nice ring to it. I like it. Good stuff. Congratulations. Good evening, everybody. And professionals. Obviously, the whole farming stuff here in the community has been, a hot topic for quite a while now. I was here when Calgo Gardens came before this board, and there was a very good energy in the room that night, regarding trying to get them over their hurdles. This, I guess, is a little bit different application because they're not here begging for forgiveness on some level. But, I had a chance to meet Ron and Susie, and I think they're great people. I've been over to the Herbery. Many of us have. It's a beautiful place. I'm happy that they decided to move forward with doing the whole site plan approval process. I know that there were some ordinances and stuff, and we were trying to streamline, the town was trying to work on, streamlining the process, but they decided to do this process. So they're kind of, I guess, in some way pioneering this process. I think you guys are really like the first, farm that has come here asking for permission for special occasion events, and yeah, Patterson, yeah, but I think they're probably a little bigger
Yeah,
operation.
there's industry going on here.
Yeah. So, it's just nice to see that, we're here. There's like what Betty said, there's a good vibe in the room, a good energy. What I really want to acknowledge, the professionals, because what I really liked is that you guys have been a little bit like forward thinking about some of these things and like the number of people and, do you want to maybe pave this in the future? We know that these approvals run with the land, and there's a very good chance that not in too distant future that Ron and Susie may say, hey, we're going to hang this up and we're going to maybe try to sell it to another, young couple that want to take this over and run this for another generation, and this is going to bring immense value to their operation over there, that, they have an approval that maybe gives them a little bit more than what they originally asked for. And I really applaud you guys for, kind of goading them into, asking for a little bit more. It doesn't hurt to have a little bit more than have to come back, and that's nice that you guys did that. So I just want to acknowledge everybody that's involved in all of this, and, that I wish them all the best. I'm sure you guys do as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Anybody else? Seeing none, do I have a motion to close?
Motion to close.
Second by Jose, all in favor?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Gavin, anything else?
I'm
Anything
going-
else from the board?
I'm going-
Professionals?
Wisely submit. Go ahead. Let's complete it.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve this application. We definitely have in the past supported farms in this way, and I think this is a great use, and I vote yes, or I make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Ms. Scottson, you're not allowed, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I know. Yeah, she's second in spirit, she's seconded. but-
I second it.
Okay, Nick, second. Roll call.
Who was second, I'm sorry?
Nick.
Okay.
Mr. Barilla.
Mr. Barillo?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
And Chairman Mertens?
9 years here, I've had to vote on a lot of applications, but the patience that both of you have shown for the town, and I cannot thank you enough for sticking with it, and I want you to succeed, and I vote yes as well.
Application is approved.
We got 2 done in one night.
That was, Mr. Galvin, can you maybe do more? I mean, that was it.
Very efficient,
Yeah,
Mr. Galvin.
Yeah, so,
We gotta take them as they come.
okay, thanks a lot. Is there any further business of the board before we make a motion to close?
I don't have any.
I'll make a motion to close, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Hughes made a motion to close. Do you have a second? All in favor? Aye. Yeah, I know.